We start at 14:05. So waiting for just this. Okay, good afternoon. Good afternoon to you all. Namaskar and adab. I welcome you all. Once again, we are on the session 4 and a second day of the C Symposium. I welcome the esteemed guests, the fellow artisans, our future PIAs, head of the social organizations, students, colleagues, and friends from media. Those who have attended yesterday, we are very well know, but for the recap for some others, yesterday's session was one of the very enriching experience, starting from the basic formal inaugural session, but though it was formal, but I think informative for in all respects, talking about NID's activities, our implementation approach, Mr. SK, shared by Dr. Subir Das, Ms. Shimul Mehta Vyas, then Mr. Sharma, who talked about the ministry's perspective and the scheme, Shri Praveen Nahar, Director NID, talking about NID and its aims and objectives and approach toward this program. Finally, at the Shri Siddharth Kishore Dev Varman, who is the Additional Secretary, Ministry of Minority Affairs, who has really boosted, promoted, and encouraged us at every step to take forward. We then witnessed the virtual tour of the product development and the experiences while implementing the scheme, the Ustad, in 5 craft clusters. Quick one is the screw pine cluster in Kerala, the paper mache in Srinagar, Manipur black pottery, glass framework in Firozabad, and soft stone work in Banaras. These were the 5 clusters which we have completed. So of course, then we heard in conversation with the almost 12 artisans from different parts. All of them, it was amazing, even if there was a connectivity issue, which we feel it would be, but none of them had it. They just managed. Everyone was there. So Ustad, as the name says, is upgradation of the skills and training in traditional arts and craft for the development. And for the development, this is a scheme of the Ministry of Minority Affairs. But while our team was implementing these in the 5 clusters, there were different varied experiences, and especially with Jonak, who is the chair for this session, there were some incidences which made it feel that there somewhere we are making those partition. Can we have a social inclusion? Can we have a social impact and inclusion, a scheme with that? Can we propose something on that? Can we have something up? Because at the end of this e-symposium, we definitely plan to share them a report of this with the suggestions from the each sessions. So this generated, or this gave us, this was the genesis of this session 4, social impact and inclusion. I would call upon Mr. Janak Das, who is a discipline lead in exhibition design. He's also the lead in the industry relation and alumni affairs. He has over 18 years of experience in varied sectors with prime focus on the product design, exhibition design, and his research area interests are design and learning spaces and environment. Over to you, Janak. I will not be taking more time, and so now it's yours. Thank you. Before I end, I'm sorry I missed on that. There we have completed on almost, like, our registration is full. So we will have the sessions, all sessions live. So my colleague would share the YouTube link on that. So that's one thing. Okay. Can you please share the link?
It's already shared on the chat box, I think.
Okay, no, I was just, acha, all right, perfectly fine, then it is there, it is. All right, over to you, Jonathan. Thank you.
Okay, Aki. Thank you, Bindu. A very warm good afternoon to everybody, and welcome to the 2-day series of sessions. The first one being on social impact and inclusion. I'll share my screen. Yes. So crafts in India have been an integral part of our social structure and framework for product creation, livelihood, and aesthetics. While most of the crafts community have had their crafts as their primary or secondary sources of income, many crafts have also once been a part of personal and socio-cultural rituals and systems, which through the times have evolved into means of commercial activity and livelihood. Hence, their role in the social fabric has been pivotal and integral. In this session, we will look at the social impact of crafts in the context of the role it has played in inclusivity in our society across the different domains: gender, religion, caste, age, and physical ability. While on the one hand, apart from means of livelihood, crafts have played a massive role to give social dignity to certain groups of the society, marginalized due to their religion and caste, by the skills and creative ability of the artisans that give them a special identity and respect. In the same way, in the largely patriarchal framework of almost all societies of our country, through craft, some women have been able to enforce their rights and say in the family by not only being able to become an earning member, but the respect and identity that they have got from the government and society in large. Crafts have been one of the most significant means of livelihood for people with special needs and challenged abilities, as we are largely aware of. In my limited association with crafts, and especially in the Ustad project experience in my cluster, I could observe the opportunities and challenges of social inclusivity, especially concerning gender, religion, and physical ability. Screwpine craft is almost entirely performed by women in Kerala. While some women become successful entrepreneurs, many become vulnerable to economic exploitation by middlemen who give them orders and sell their products in the market. Here, organizations like KIDS and JCW, whom we had worked, have played a very important role in giving women their due economic support, as well as providing a safe environment for them to come and work. Thus, craft has played a major role in their domestic status as earning members of the house, as well as given them the dignity of artists with special artistic abilities for creating beautiful products. The screwpine craft in its basic form is not very difficult to learn and relies on mostly fine motor skills. Hence, it is a very suitable craft for people who are specially abled, but with able hands and skills and vision. So today we have with us 3 individuals with immense experience, knowledge, and insights regarding the aspects of inclusion in many of these domains. We have Dr. Sabyasachi, Professor of Sociology in Jamia Millia Islamia, with his vast amount of experience in social anthropology, political ecology, indigenous people, development, and social movements. We have Ms. Tilakam Rajendran, a rehab professional who has been working in the disability sector for over 30 years. And we have Ms. Devika Krishnan, who is a designer by profession and has been working in the social sector for over 30 years, specializing in livelihood generation projects with crafts. We will start with Dr. Sabyasachi, and we look forward to his views on social inclusion aspect of crafts, primarily covering the domains of religion and caste, the opportunities and challenges.
Thank you, Jana. It's an honor to be speaking as a panelist here. And I wish to give you a historical perspective on craft and social inclusion. I want to begin by saying that, development is essentially a post-war reconstruction program, right from the very beginning. And it continues to be so. And this is important to recognize because we need to assess the significance of crafts, the significance of craftsmen in the way we have to live in this world, a world which is largely structured by a process of development which comes after having destroyed everything. In the development parlance, this is called creative destruction. I won't go into that. We can discuss that as a discussion. But to begin with, we must understand that before colonial India, or during colonial India, and to a large extent even now, crafts and craft products were basically patronized by kings, lords, and feudal lords and monarchical systems. Crafts were objects of craftspeople were really symbols of civilization, symbols of culture, and that is what every culture defined itself with. At the same time, the craftspeople who were not being patronized by feudal lords and monarchs were also the occupational castes within the caste system. These were outside the fold of the twice born people, and they were largely outcast and marginalized by the caste system. Now, in both instances, what we need to understand is in this particular period of development, there was a very strict separation between mental and manual labor. And we have to recognize that mental labor was privileged over manual labor. That was the basic ground with which we began. And we must recognize that in this period, very little percentage of what the craftspeople did actually adorned their own houses, beautified their own houses. It was basically made as product for society as such. Then we had come in modern times. The market played a very important role and freed the craftspeople from the caste system, from the feudal lords and the monarchical privilege. The state became the patron. The open market brought the craftspeople in direct link with the consumer. As a result, production of craft goods increased. Craft people earned a livelihood, did not die in penury, and along with it, craft was uh, liberated from its relationship to agriculture. As a part of the caste system, we must recognize the craft people form the non-agricultural sector of the rural economy. Now, with the coming of the market, this link between agriculture and crafts was broken, and feudal patronage was broken, it was diluted, and a whole entire world was opened up for the caste system. Even in this phase, the amount of produce the craftspeople made did not actually come back to the homes. They produced for the outside world. There was a certain equalization that happened between craftspeople and the rest of society. But even in this case, the division of mental and manual labor did not get resolved. The craftspeople were very equal in the market when they sat in the market, but the coming to the market did not really transform their social lives and social structures. So the inclusion of craft in the market did not create social inclusion outside the market within their own social life. We have all these systems working together at the same time. Craft products are used by the aristocracy, by the very rich. But what has happened over the period of time is craft products have now become part of middle class households. But craft persons have also become middle class. They've also become upgraded. But the traditions of crafts have slightly got diluted because of the association with the market. Crafts were then got into a dialogue with designers. Designers contributed to modifying the crafts, bring them up to the value that was to be generated in the market, and process of encouragement happened there. But there was something that happened to the creativity of the craft, because craft was now becoming an instrumental way of doing things. Craft was an instrumentality in promoting gross national products of the country. But correspondingly, the recognition that was to be given to the craftspersons in ratio to the contribution to the GDP of the country did not really happen. Uh, what is important to understand in this history is that we need to understand that the hand is not merely an instrument of making things. The hand is equally a product of having made these things. Frederick Engels, in a very, very interesting article on the role of labor in the transition from ape to man, points this out. And we have to understand that the hand is a very, very mysterious creation of nature, which has the possibilities not of creating products, but which also has the possibility of creating a human being that we are. Now we have to, this history has to go a little further. Craft is playing very important roles in healing people now. We know that the use of the hand is very, very important for the intellectual growth of people. There was a study undertaken in Europe, and it was found that children who had not played with toys, who had not used their hands, children who had not walked on their fours, were actually deficient in some intellectual skills when they grew up. So we are now realizing that the hand is not only something that constructs products, the hand is something that constructs the human being also. Now, this is a very important conception which we need to also transfer to understanding what the role of crafts can be in modern society. I need to therefore differentiate here between the importance of craft and craft persons. In today's society, the bottom line is that everybody is facing some kind of a disability. Whether he is rich, whether he is poor, whether it is on account of lifelong diseases, whether it is on account of family problems, whether it is on account of being physically challenged, there is a certain amount of disability and challenge that each one of us faces in life. Secondly, we also have to understand that the industrial world, which creates the world for us, does not have the capacity to absorb everyone. Precisely because the scale of technology is so large that only very few people can access it. Craft has a very great advantage over industrial technology. It is to the human scale, number one. Number two, that everybody can be engaged in crafts and participate in every aspect of life: economy, politics, society, culture, knowledge, all sectors of life, everybody can participate, because craft is something that helps us to coordinate the eye, the hand, and the mind. These are three very important components of growth. These are three very important components that have been marginalized, have been annihilated with a process of excessive industrial development. We have climate change, we have racism, we have deforestation, we have joblessness, and a whole range of things that are affecting us all the time. And we can't say that because we are well off, we're not going to be affected by it. Now we have to position craft in this world. And I want to suggest that craft is a very important means of redesigning our lives, not just products for people. Craft is a very important tool to redesign our lives so that we can live in this world with sanity. We can live in this world like respectable human beings, and we can leave behind for our next generation a heritage on which they can develop and live a very, very respectable life. I also want to stress that craft is very important from the point of view of reverence of life. The value that craft promote and the value that this modern society needs is a value for life. Reverence for life is a very important value that can be promoted through crafts. Craft is not only a way of making products, craft embodies a very deep-seated view of the world. Craft determines our subconscious, craft can refashion our conscious minds, craft can refashion who we are in the deepest part of who we are. It is this that we have to understand and reposition craft and see what we can do with the craft too. However, the crafts people that we have at the moment, their creativity is getting limited because of a disproportionate dependence on the market. Markets are very important, but the limit beyond which the market will begin to undermine the creativities of craftsmen has to be recognized. We need to step out of our own frames of reference and examine where is the limit beyond which we can't go. And I want to suggest, and this is my closing point, that craft is not dealing with clients. We are not dealing with consumers. We are dealing with beings with a worldview. The present dispensation does not look at craft as more than dealing with clients, more than dealing with consumers. Crafts are dealing with beings in the world. Crafts are dealing with people who have a worldview. Crafts is giving us the ground on which we can stand as respectable, dignified, self-reliant human beings in a world that is depriving us progressively of our basic sensibilities. And I think it is this that we need to keep in mind in order to work with master craftsmen and the orientation that we need to give them and the orientation that we need to learn from them. The last thing I want to put forward to all of you is that there is a creativity in crafts which is very different from the creativity of industrial technology. Industrial technology creativity adds value through novelty. And this novelty gets obsolete over time. Craft creates creativity by freshness. It creates a freshness in the world in which we live. It keeps up the freshness of the world in which you live. Try and imagine the world, try and imagine yourself and your environment after a very heavy rainpour. The freshness that you see in the leaves, the freshness that you see in the atmosphere is something that crafts can contribute to the world. And the world that we need to build is not going to be created by novelty. We need freshness in the world in order that we may keep our sensibilities alive, look at the world in a more creative way, and see how we can make this place a better place to live in. Thank you very much. That's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, Sabyasachi. It was an amazingly enriching bouquet of insights, and we could ponder and respond to it in so many ways. Right now, I'll request Ms. Tilakam Rajendran to share with us her views and opinions on social inclusion aspects of crafts, primarily covering the domains of her specialized area, physical ability, and the opportunities and challenges henceforth. You can share your screen. Yes. You have to unmute yourself, Tilakamji.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, good afternoon and very, I'm really thankful and privileged to be here and sharing. I think the very word inclusion is what I'm here for. And being a rehab person, this is a great privilege that I'm in the midst of all designers and ministry. And I think I need to go to a slideshow. Is my sharing visible?
No, if you can go full screen, please, like Control L.
Um, yeah, one second. I think I just. Yeah, is it visible? No. Is it visible?
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you so much again. And here I am sharing few, experiences of how the rehab sector or the people with disabilities have largely benefited by being part of this world, and how we have tried our best to include and get them mainstreamed and, becoming earning member in the family and being also contributing citizens. So I'm just sharing, how, you can see all these products which are visible to you and how it has gone beyond barriers. So craft is one thing, like Sabyasachi said just now, shared that it has included everybody, not just people with disability, the families, the NGOs, the people who are working in the rehab sector. We have brought in everybody to, get them mainstreamed. So it's a very, very inclusive manner in which craft has brought everybody together, the whole, people across our country and people who are working. Uh, I'm just unable to move my slide. Is there a way that I can get it back? Yeah. So here I'm sharing few people who are behind, and yes, people with disability look different. Perception is what we are really fighting in this sector, and how each one of them, as you can see, they are all people who are artisan, weavers, artists, entrepreneurs, and they are all creating and being contributors. So they are in fact the invisible contributors in this segment, and who have not yet largely gained by getting into the mainstream world, the the world, the theme itself, where we are talking about inclusion. So here at PAR, I quickly want to share, this is a limited liability organization. We started in 2015 and we work with a number of people. And here a major job where, as I shared with you earlier also in the disability sector, we are working with largely those people who are left behind. People in the sector, disability are more towards rehab work. So but as we have been working across the country, and we see maximally people are working in the craft area, either maybe because they belong to the artisan family, or they are supported through local trainers, through vocational skill development program, and many of them have reasonable infrastructure like NGOs and connected to local resources. And I would like to share that a number of people with developmental disabilities, people with autism and intellectual challenge, they have largely benefited by being in the craft sector. But the real challenge for us was to transform these existing skills to market-driven products, because when we are talking for them, we are talking of making them contributors, making them generate some income for themselves. And they mostly belonging to the local areas, they were competing with the same products in and among their own market. So that's where the whole difference started, and we started linking with the organizations and institutions like NID. And today, I being here, I'm largely indebted to NID, because Bindu was my mentor, and the whole sector, how she developed the disability sector to come out of its shell. I think I would give the whole credit to her and large number of designers who worked with us. So the preparation started with moving them from the existing belief and practices, from cost driven selling Many of us would have experienced how the disability sector sells their products. It's only during Diwali or some festival season, and then it is closed and shut shop. So that from there we started the journey to creating market-worthy products, to looking at the design essence and the sense of the individual, and also largely putting a lot of effort on the entrepreneurship skills and bringing them, coming out to create a business sense in what they were doing, which was very important for us. Of course, it was therapeutical for many, but from there to moving out to create a entrepreneurial mindset, creating product segmentation, getting designers, doing a lot of product innovation, working on supply chain, creating a competitive pricing, packaging, all these were very new to the disability sector. We as a rehabilitator, we don't understand these things. So it was very important for us to understand how can we move from just a hobby or a craft into a kind of an income generation or a kind of an entrepreneurial journey for them. So this is how you can see a person with intellectual disability who had the skill. They were making puzzles or making some kind of a activity which was very inherent to creating products for their need, for learning, and from there the same skill got converted into products like lamps, and this is how the paradigm shift started, using the existing skills. Here you can see a deafblind person who was taught like this macrame in the institutions. And from there, how, it was mind-boggling for us to see that, yes, he's learned the skill, but what will he do with the skill? How this craft work can create a life for himself. So that is where we really struggled, and we started creating those products into lanyard, creating mass, requirement products, creating such, bags and handles and belts, so that it becomes more a livelihood project for them. So here again, design innovation using ethnic craft. So there were people who were within homes, residential homes, where parents put them saying that they are, no more, we can't bring them. So from there, where the teachers teach them the local craft. So converting those local kantha, design which she has learned, and then to create these products, and then it became like a wow product for the market. So it was an amalgamation of the individual skills, the local, ethnicism, and also bringing them to make the customer or the person who was looking at it to say, wow, this is what we are looking at, and where the disability just vanishes. The product, the eyes which behold the product, the perception changes. So craft was beyond disabilities or anything which was coming in the way. It's the product and the hands, like just now Sir Sabyasachi was saying, the hands which brought in that kind of the kind of wow thing in the product. So here, of course, it was a long journey, and it's still a journey to consider them as artisan. So that's how our struggle is still there. So here you have a bamboo craftsman who is a real star. So he's a DPO member, gold medalist, and also and so I would say there is a real social inclusion happening here, because he's like the very craft has given him an identity in his community. And he has built, so I would say craft has built lives. Yes, there is social inclusion if the person gets into any craft or oriented activity, the life just gets converted, and it's recognition, and there's so much of power in that individual, and builds confidence that it goes beyond saying that we could manage to do and bring people out of their shell. I think again I'm stuck with a little bit of problem. Can I get some help? Hello?
The arrow buttons.
So I'm just moving forward. So here again, Tariq May's journey, who started as an artisan. So when we really introduced him to Dastakar and other organizations, and it was a little challenge for us to say, yes, he's a person with disability, but yet he is an artisan, and he deserves to be in a different segment, not just rehab institutions. So from there, the journey started, and today, he has, 45 people employed with him, and he's locally connected to a big community, and he's an entrepreneur by himself, and his products are like really out of the world, and it goes into international. He's got awards, and in fact, Lala Tabji went to his home to, help him and get the designers involved. So how the world changes for the individual is an amazing thing to see, that given the kind of support, the ecosystem, opening up, it's a big thing. So I won't go much with what we do. We do entrepreneurship training program on design development, market, and all these things are what we support as from at par. And the word itself talks about how we believe in being at par. So we give them the word, and you will see that life changes for them. We also created a network of entrepreneurs with disability called MIDA. And we call it MIDA because in spite of their challenges, they're chosen to be an entrepreneur. They're chosen to come out of their shell. And that's how MIDA today has 100 members, and it works across 9 states. And these are small initiatives which we are working with very hard to bring them out of their shell, connecting to every part of the segment in the society, whether be it any ministry. So we talk about handicraft ministry, we talk about MSME. So this is what I ask of this craft and the Ministry of Minorities, that recognize the talents and skill of all persons with disability. I would say here, because all are equally important. If we segmentize under each ministry, it becomes difficult because like I know we have artisans who may be from OBC or who may be from SC/ST, not maybe belonging to any minority, but yet he is a person with talent and skill. So we need to give them that due recognition as artisan, artist, entrepreneur, producer groups, and enable them to give the artisan ID card has made tremendous differences in many of our people's life, and that's I would say a card to inclusion, because the minute they get that card, they get exhibition, they get access to exhibitions, they get access to move out of the country, we participate in skill development programs. But artisan ID card is not easily available for people with disability. It's still a struggle for them, because again perception comes in the in the way. So conversion and inclusion is what we are requesting the ministry schemes to talk about all persons with disability across any segment to be included. Similarly, institutes like NID to give special recognition to design internship projects for this segment, it makes a huge difference. And NGOs who work in this segment are not aware. Not many will come up to you to say, hey, we have artisans, can you help us? So these are some things which is still a lacking. There's a disconnect between the rehab sector and people who are working in this segment of, people in this segment. So somewhere we need to create that communication going on a large platform, the implementation, and trickling down to the last mile and the grassroots working. So that's a small, I just want to finish with this. These are my few asks from the sector. So I would say let's create a world for all and unlock every human potential who are still struggling to come out and create a livelihood out of craft, and that's the only thing which I leave that thought with all of you. And thank you so much for including rehab person into this segment. I mean, the recognition itself shows that how inclusive we have, how we are opening up doors, and many more to come, I think, in the few years to come. And this has been a long journey, but yet I would want that every organization, small entity who is in the rehab sector to be able to approach any of the large institutions and take support, and any of the ministries to come forward and give us a supporting hand. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tilakam ji. It was a really valuable on the ground response, and not only insights, the experience you shared with us are really will, I think, go forward in terms of re-envisioning this sector. I'll now request Ms. Devika Krishan ji to share with us her views and opinions on social inclusion of aspects of crafts, primarily covering the domains of maybe age and gender, the opportunities and challenges. On to you, Devika.
Hello, all. Thank you for having me on this conference. Um, I would like to start off with a short film. Um, I was pleasantly surprised to know that Tilakam and I have both worked with Tariq. And Tariq is from a small little place in Kashmir, north of Srinagar, from a little village. And he and his brothers and their friends are all specially abled. Um, his family, especially, he and his brothers have muscular dystrophy. So their movement of their limbs are limited, and their fingers are not as dexterous as yours or mine are. However, they can create magic that you and I cannot. And there's a little film that I would like to show, because I was fortunate to be a part of a project called Commitment to Kashmir, and one of my mentees was Tariq. Um, and when I started working with him, at the beginning of my work, he used to be carried or helped by his nephew to reach from place to place. Towards the end of our interaction, you will see. Please play the, yeah.
परिवार तो तकरीबन 40 साल से जुड़ा हुआ है। मेरा भी 25 साल से ये काम चल रहा है। मस्कुलर डिस्ट्रॉफी बचपन से है। बचपन में काम की बढ़ती गई।
हम इस सोचने से काम करते हैं, लेकिन इसका मार्केट बिल्कुल कुछ भी नहीं है।
हमारा यही था कि पहले हम सिटोफे के जरिए से नए नए डिजाइन बना सकते हैं। दूसरा ये कि हमने जो विंटर मेले में शिरकत की है, उसके जरिए से हमें थोड़ी सी मार्केटिंग में और इजाफा हो गया।
Yeah, thank you. If you could stop sharing the screen, I'll share mine. Thanks. Can you see can you see the screen?
Yes, yes, we can. If you can go Control L,
I'll
make
just,
it full screen. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be rather brutal about my the way I present, in the fact that I think the world is becoming more and more a society that is not equal at all to anyone who is not young, who is not heterosexually male, and who has some sort of challenge or the other, who's not able-bodied. We seem to be getting very, very divisive and very, very in terms of our hierarchy of who's good and who's not good. So it's really not an equal or an equitable society. So the challenges that we face could be patriarchal, it could be to do with parenthood, because parenthood is largely a responsibility of the woman. The man really doesn't have much to do. So especially in the craft sector, where I largely work with women, I find it very interesting how we end up figuring how to manage our work and take care of our children. Age is a deterrent, because when you look at a craft like weaving or fine embroidery, by the time the person is 45, 50, They just told that their eyesight is too poor and they're not really capable of producing the best output that they used to earlier. So they're made to feel redundant. Literacy is a huge issue, and by literacy, I don't just mean reading and writing, but also financial literacy, social literacy in many senses. Where you come from, your region is also an issue. It could be, the climate could be such that it allows you to practice your occupation only certain times of the year. Of course, your religion, your caste, your physical capability, your mental capabilities, the political climate of the place, and of course, and your level of income, all of these determine um, how well you fare in the world. How in all these things are what makes the world unequal right now. And this image I have kept, most of my images are actually just for me to remember why I am talking what I'm talking today. This image is from Dastika Ranthambore. It's a project that's the closest to my heart. It was set up in 1989 by Valmik Thapar, who's standing at the back in the red and black shirt, and Laila, who's sitting in front in the blue sari. In 1989, when there was a lot of human strife because several villages were resettled from outside the tiger sanctuary when the tiger sanctuary was declared a national park and made it into a no man's zone in Ranthambore. A lot of people lost their old way of life. And while everybody focused on conservation and saving the tiger, nobody really thought of what happens to these thousands of people who've been unsettled more than resettled. And so Valu set up a project, he set up an initiative called Ranthambore Tiger Foundation, which along with looking into the wildlife conservation, was also looking into the human side of conservation. And he approached, they set up things like dairy and banking and hospitals, education, family planning. They did a survey of all the sort of things that the region was struggling to cope with, and he set up all these little areas to be addressed. And one of them was livelihoods through craft. And so Laila was brought in to set up this livelihood enterprise. There was just one small problem. The population that we were working with had no inherent craft skill um, that we could tap into. So Laila started with a little bit of patchwork with 6 women in one small house. And now we work in 9 villages. I don't know how many hundreds of people we reach out to. And Ujwala, who's sitting next to Laila in this photograph, manages the entire enterprise now. We were 35,000 or 37,000 in 1989 was our turnover. Now it's close to 2 crores. And we operate out of a little remote village called Kutalpura Malya in Ranthambore. So for me, Ranthambore is very, very special because it's in that part of geography where patriarchy is at its highest. So to actually have all these women with their heads uncovered and their faces showing, all the women that you see in front sitting are the ones who joined in 1989, and then they brought their bahus and their betis and their granddaughters. The older women would have gotten married before they were 10 years old, but at least they ensured that their daughters got married a little later. And now I'm seeing the granddaughters who were born, I was there. I've seen them from birth. They now have an education and they're working in Delhi and Bombay and Jaipur as nurses, teachers, bankers, what have you. So change is slow. And but change is there for sure if we don't approach a situation in a charitable way. If we stop feeling sorry for ourselves and sorry for the other person, but actually start looking at the strengths that we all have and work with the strengths. um, One of the big challenges in pretty much every society in the world is patriarchy. And in all my work that I've done across India, I haven't seen it stronger than in the villages near Varanasi. This is a village called Bhatpurva, and this was a recent project, just 4 years old. And this is one of the first women weaving units to come up in Varanasi. These girls are all married, and my task was to set up this women's unit. We faced a lot of challenges, and they've become little celebrities because um, there are no women who weave in Varanasi. So for every sort of which is insane, because actually we have more women weavers in India than men male. So here's a geography that's so steeped in patriarchy that women don't sit at tasks that would command respect. So it was quite a challenge, but we've overcome it, and all these girls are weavers now. What was interesting was earlier, before we started the project, most of these girls are unmarried, two of them are married. Most of them were, you know, all set to get married. Everybody was saying, "Pata nahi kaise kaam pe aayenge, rishta pakka kar diya hai," and they're all like 18, 20. They're very, very young. And so we said, okay, we can start work and then let's see what happens. And what's happened now is because they've become weavers and they're bringing in an income at home by weaving, by helping their fathers out and their brothers out. Um, um, there's no longer a hurry to actually get them married and have them start producing babies and forget that they have anything else to do in life. So this is an interesting way of addressing early marriage, is by actually economically empowering young girls. And how do we go about economically empowering is by, this is just the simplest design process that I follow in my work. I take people out on what I call an inspiration tour. So we take 2 or 3 days, we go in autos, vans, buses, by walk, by boat, to various places around the region. And most of these people live in villages 10 to 25 kilometers from Varanasi, but have never stepped into Varanasi. So I took them to Sarnath, to Varanasi. We went in a boat. We went to all sorts of places. And they all were asked to take smartphones, borrow smartphones from their brothers, and take pictures of whatever they liked, and then translate those pictures into drawings. And then we taught them the basics of the Tana and the Bana and the weaving, and how to construct artworks. And and then they started weaving what they were inspired by. The other challenge that I see is parenthood. This picture is rather self-explanatory. It's amazing how the kids are just fed and put to sleep wherever they find space. So long as he's out of harm's way, it's perfectly fine, and the mother can sit and focus on her work. Um, just for a minute, imagine those were three men sitting and embroidering. Do you think how would this picture look then? It's an impossible thing to even think of, because we're so used to seeing women bring their babies and their children to work. How many men bring their children to work? The third thing is age. So like I said, after a certain point, you sort of make a person redundant because she's no longer, technically capable of producing good work. And in Seva, in Radhanpur, is this example of Gauri Bain. She's the one sitting and pointing out at stuff. So when I was working with Seva in developing, new markets, new products, the same story. I actually get the women themselves to create designs. I don't do the designs myself. And then we evolve what comes out of what they have created. So Gauri Bain can no longer embroider with as much finesse as she used to. but she's got a very keen eye for detail because she's so experienced. So what we typically do is I make the senior members of the team as the advisors and the selectors, the selection committee of what works and what doesn't. So it's all done in a very democratic way. And Seva, for that matter, has done such a fantastic job because they felt that once a woman goes past a certain age, and age becomes a liability, and she can no longer earn the income that she used to earlier. How do we go about addressing that and keeping her income going? And they hit upon a fantastic idea. And now anyone in the world, and many do access it, anyone in the world can actually go and stay in Gauriben's house in a little village called Bakutra in North Gujarat, very close to the border, on the eastern side of the Ran of Kutch. And yeah, and she'll take care of you. She's a fabulous hostess. So when we look at challenges, we don't need to look at it entirely from just that one lens. So what if she can't embroider? There are other ways of uh, making, of celebrating her enterprising spirit. Literacy. So just the whole thing of how do you calculate, how do you do costing, how do you figure out how to make a production plan, what are the materials that you need to buy, how much are you going to spend on your embellishment versus your base material. So all these details have to be taught. Very often when we enter into a craft project, all we think of is product. We don't think of the back end of it. We don't think where they're going to source the things from. How much are they going to spend on the sourcing? How many pieces can be made of the prototype that you've developed? I've seen so many prototypes that then don't see the light of day because they make fantastic prototypes, but in production, it's a huge challenge. So along with product development, I think we need to have design literacy and business literacy associated with the product, with the project. Um, and by financial literacy, it doesn't just stop at costing. It is all forms of bookkeeping, right down to your financial management. Tariq here is doing his P&L forms. He knows his capex and his opex, how to create his balance sheet. And this is true of pretty much every craft group that I work with. The other challenge that one faces is the political climate of a region. Very often, especially in a place like Kashmir, we set out for the day to work and then halfway through are sent back because of curfew. And this becomes a huge challenge because when we start working towards market demands, the market is not so forgiving. So if there's an order to be delivered by the 10th of XYZ and the place goes down into a lockdown, what happens? There is, of course, a geographical limitation, as in a climatic limitation in a place that I work in South Kashmir. We have winters that last for 5 to 6 months. And I work with a nomadic tribe. I work with the Gujar Bakarwal. This is a project that my friend Ramneek and I set up ourselves. And we've opened and shut this project 6 times already, but haven't given up hope. And we've shut and opened it 6 times because we are working out of a geography which is either rife with insurgency or blocked out because of snow. To compound our complexity of work, this is the population, this is a community that migrates every year from the source of the river Lidar down to, when it joins Jhelum down to Jammu, about 300 kilometers up and down every year. And we catch them on their way up or on their way down. So it's a very interesting challenge of setting up a supply chain and a business practice on, for nomads without actually making them settlers or altering their lifestyle. I don't have to speak of people with lesser incomes. I have this picture here of Raisa only because Um, when we started working there, this is near Ranthambore. So this is it's a village called Basokhurd, which was half into the sanctuary. And 7 years ago, the government wanted to resettle them. So everybody moved except for this one particular community, which was so poor, they didn't care. Um, and a lot of their men are working in what they call Dubai में खेत में काम कर रहे हैं. I don't know what they do in Dubai, in the UAE or wherever they have gone, the men. So it's largely women left in this village and their children, very little schooling, um, and there was really no skill to speak of, but everyone knows, all the women knew how to braid. I mean, that's the basic thing that we all know. We know how to plait our hair. So we've started with braiding and we've come up with a whole lot of products that are selling really well. And this lady, I remember her telling my friend, "Tu mera पेट भर दे तो मैं सब कर दूं." That's all there was to it. She said, just fill my stomach up. Don't ask me for things, just give me something to eat. Uh, I don't have to speak much on this because we've already spoken. And so I don't see myself as a designer or, somebody who is here to help people out or to set up businesses or anything. It's just that I find that the world is becoming more and more and more into little islands. I don't know why we are doing this to ourselves. And I feel my task is to build bridges. And this last photograph is here in Bangalore, in my neighborhood. I volunteer once in a while at a government school across my house, and I found in just random conversations that all the children were being frightened by their parents and teachers to do what, I mean, if they were naughty or whatever, to set them right by saying, "We'll call the police." And so they all thought police are these demons or devils or are these terrible people who will put them in jail. And we are working with the police department and police wanted their um, scooter park to be painted by volunteers. So we have a little citizens volunteer group happening in my neighborhood. And he came up and said, "Ma'am, why don't you, we need to paint our car park, scooter park." So I thought this was a fantastic opportunity. And so my friend, who is the lead volunteer of this group, she set up this, and all of us helped her. And this was a bridge that was built where the police and the children together painted a very long wall. And the kids realized that, the police are great to hang out with. Many of them now want to be police officers. Yeah, so um, when I talk of, sorry.
Hi, Devika. We have some questions.
Yeah.
Can we take them now?
Yeah. So I just wanted to say that really, I don't know what can be done in the current circumstances in this world, but I think all we need to do is keep at it, keep building bridges.
Yeah, thank you so much, Devika. It was again straight from the grassroots and actual on-hand working, that so much of experience and these things. And I think all of these three, the way Dr. Sabyasachi started from a historical perspective and opening up certain questions, and it just raises more and more questions. A lot of questions come to our mind, but I think it'll be only fair now if you open up for certain questions that any of the viewers are attending. Tanishka, are we able to see the questions, any, or have they been put up on the chat by? I have been not able to see any question which has come up on chat, but if anybody wants to have any particular question to ask. Yeah, I don't think I have seen any question coming on the chat or from the panelist or from. Um,
I have a question. Yesterday when um, the uh, the undersecretary from the ministry, Mr. Sandeep Kumar, was talking about the scheme components and its sort of specialities. He uh, mentioned, and I remember somebody in the audience also asking about this, that that the scheme actually had a 3% reservation for people with different abilities. And I was wondering, what Tilakram, do you think, what do you think about how do you see that number? And what kind of impact could it have?
More than the number and the percentage here, I would like to, even I was there part of that question where I was seeing every ministry, see this particular thing when we are talking of minority ministry coming forward with such a beautiful, wonderful program. But again, if we are secluding person with disability within the minority, so that is where, I was when we were talking about inclusion. So a person with disability, even otherwise, is secluded from the society and the fabric of, getting into the access of many things. So if we are going to, so they don't have the, the bandwidth or the information of how do they access services. And so when, if at all they access the minority, and only the minority disabled can access the minority disabled schemes, so it is again secluded, I would say, way of handling certain groups here. So there may be obvious reasons for it, but still, I would say when we talk about people with disabilities or the challenge, it is not just the 3%. So every ministry, if it opens up, there would be a large number of people across the country who would benefit. So that is where I think we look at it as a person-specific requirement rather than seclusion in the seclusion. So that's my take on that. So I would say that open it up, and anywhere in that community, in that segment, in that village, or if you find people in that community with disability, just include them. Does not matter who they are and how, which community or which segment they belong to. So it becomes very, again, very, partial, the disadvantage being more disadvantage in that segment, in that community. So like agriculture, I remember when we were working in the village, everybody is harvesting time does not look at disability, men, women, old people, everybody is there in the field. So similarly, handicraft and craft, these are all hand, skills. So which our people with disability are very good at, and it does not ask for too much of access, and which otherwise our community is not able to provide. Still, it's still yet to open. So education, everywhere access is becoming a big issue. So if they can do something with their hands, being at home, and being in their own community and create a life for themselves, I think that's where we are, from where I would seek this kind of a support from the entire ministry or institutions, which whoever is working in this segment.
Tilakam, I just wanted to, when a question like this comes as 3%, and we do know the fact that there are many ministries also have this 1-2%, 3%, and especially a ministry absolutely assigned. We as an institute, many times, we are made to even at least report to these are the number of people who are into this sector. But we are not sure what is ahead of that and what is more than that. So even if we want to, many times we are unable to get it in this line. So we may, when we are putting it all together, we highlight this point. Like, how do the ministry would like to even talk about that 3%? All right, whatever it is, but how do they want to address to it? Thank you for this, and it was a great session. And yes, thank you, Tilakam. It was a very humble beginning with you, but you've really made it look too big. Thank you. Thank you, Devika. Yes, you've been a colleague, and your work into the sector, which is and the field there is amazing. And from into textile, I was amazed to see you working on the handloom, and like okay, and you know the reasons for it.
So that's the occupational hazard. If you've dedicated your professional life to craft, every other project is textiles. Yeah, there's no escaping it. I
In
think
fact,
I've forgotten my clay work.
there is no boundaries and no lines. So that's how.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
You can ask me technical jacquard questions and I shall answer.
All right, thank you. Sorry, this was of the textile people two together and studying together. Pardon me, the panel for this. And thank you, Dr. Sabir Sashi, for an amazing input on that. And yes, you very rightly said, craft is an important tool to redesign life. And going on to the
sorry, just in the context.
Sorry, I took your role. Sorry.
No, there is a very interesting
that's absolutely
question.
fine. Yeah, there is no, yes, exactly. There is one or two very interesting questions which have come up. So I just wanted to put attention towards that. Is that this is, I mean, of course, one is a rhetorical, although PW artisans are doing best for the country, either promoting culture or adding in country's economy, but why society doesn't accept disabled people fully? I mean, I don't know whether that's more of a rhetorical question in that sense, because I think the answer goes more towards the change of a mindset in the society as large. But one small question to Dr. Sabyasachi before we just end this is that in terms of policy framework, strategies, and ideas, one or two key things that can be done other than reservations, especially because you are coming from a historical point of view. And you have also seen it from a policy level. Any suggestions, Dr. Sabyasachi?
I think policy level, whatever has been done and whatever has been said is necessary. But I think policy must also look at other forms of disabilities where they are not so apparent. You know, for instance, people who are suffering from lifetime diseases, right? What kind of design input, what kind of craft input can we give into those people? The second question that I want to put forward to design educators is that the instrumentalist dimension of craft has been highlighted quite a lot. But craft as an embodiment of a worldview needs a little more emphasis in order to set the perspective right. You know, the more we rely on the government, the more handicapped are we going to become. Government is certainly very important. They will help us, but government has limited resources. Government's priorities are very different. And if we have to foster craft as a bearer of worldviews, then I think there is some necessity to bring that in craft education first, in design education first, before we look at people outside. My other request is that, yes, patrons are now the government. There are some rich people who patronize. There are NGOs who get funds from people to patronize these. But I think there is also scope for looking at other ways to promote craft other than patronage. For instance, the self-help group tradition that has been set in this country, right? Can that be harnessed as a platform for promoting craft? You know, a whole lot of work goes into microfinance, financing people for livelihoods. Microfinance and craft has never ever talked to each other. You know, the Devika's work in Ranthambore is very fascinating. But Devika's work is also another example of the fact that you first destroy a community and its livelihood, then you create a livelihood for those communities again. I think this is a contradiction that we need to address very, very squarely. This is happening all the time.
And
all the time.
So I wanted to say that there is in Ranthambore and pretty much every project that I work at, the first thing that we do after we sort of organize the group is actually set up self-help groups. The first thing that we try and do is address financial literacy. So yes, craft and SHGs are very, very interlinked, at least in the work that I do. and what to do. Policies destroy occupations, policies destroy people's lives, and we have to find an alternative. So sometimes, well, if I could cook, cooking would be an alternative, but I design. So I think in the creative field, craft actually, like you said, it's a way of life. Uh, it
Can I
needs
make
to be looked
another
at
small
that.
point here?
Yes, yes.
Vika, just a small point. Yonak, the kitchen needs to be rehabilitated in social life. The kitchen has been destroyed by a certain notion of patriarchy and certain notion of women's rights. Kitchen is where civilizations boast of, right? Our food is what civilization is characterized with as much as its craft. Kitchen work is craftsmanship. I mean, the destruction of the kitchen is the destruction of civilization. And I think, and there is no patronage required there. How to study is an important craft. There are so many advisories that go to primary school kids on what to do, what not to do. And most of these advices are bunkum because these advices will never work. So I think there is need to work with primary schools. They need to work with what we call mainstream is actually bruised and injured. We don't understand this because it is mainstream, because it is hyped up as glamour. We don't see the injuries that
Dr. Sabyasachi, it's really great to hear you. I know I may sound a little rude and brutal on it because I still really want to hear you more. But I have been getting requests. There are a whole list of 2 more sessions and the panel is waiting.
Sure.
Apologies for it, for in the sense, but it's been great hearing it. Thank you, each one. And I was taking your line, which was just that craft is an important tool to redesign life. And for me, craft has been the way of sustainability, which leads to the second session, the next session of the day, which is craft and sustainability. And here this will be taken by the colleague Tanishka Kachru. She was the project head for the paper mache craft in Srinagar. Tanishka is a senior faculty in the exhibition design discipline and head NID Press. I would not elaborate more on the panelists. Over to you, Tanishka. And of course, I need to talk a little bit about the session. Should I take a minute more on that? Craft practices usually have a strong, this is the background in which they are talking. Craft practices usually have a strong local identity through their application of holistic making practices, context-based knowledge, culturally specific responses, and community-centered production. This form of locally based, customizable, and responsive production is discussed here in terms of its relationship to sustainability and as a promising direction for future manufacturing. Over to you, Tanishka, please.
Thanks, Bindu. And I thank all my colleagues and the panelists of the previous session. It was so amazing to hear all of you and your views, and especially all the work you're doing in Kashmir. I was part of the cluster, Ustad cluster that worked in Srinagar. So we all sending messages ki Kashmir to chha gaya hai aaj. Because in this panel also we shall share a little bit about our experiences of working with the paper mache cluster. I welcome my co-panelists. I have today with me Shreya Majumdar. Shreya is Executive Director of the All India Handicraft Association. Sorry, I think I'm saying it wrong. She'll correct me. ICA is
Craft Workers Welfare Association.
Thank you. They've been working on something very interesting, Craftmark Green, which she's going to tell us about today. Then I also have Rebecca Rubens, my very dear colleague, and currently we are also co-editors of a book on craft and sustainability, a handbook. She runs her own sustainability design firm and is a World Bamboo Ambassador. I'm sure many of you would have heard of her. And I have Burhan, Burhanuddin Khatib, founder of Kashmir Innovation Lab. He has been part of the project of the Ustad project, so you'll hear from him about that. And my colleague from textile design, Shakti Vale. I don't know, I can't see Shakti. Shakti, are you here?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Thank you all for joining. And I wanted to pick up the thread from where, the previous panel discussion, it led beautifully into ours. And in recent years, design and anthropology have been increasingly intertwined in these kind of discourses on what I'd like to call cohabitations, between and the kind of anthropocentric views of the world and this underlying separation between nature and humanity, right? Which is what had fueled the industrial revolution, and how those are being questioned today, and these relationships and coexistences between human and non-human actors are being renegotiated from an ethical perspective. Um, this recognition of this coexistence has actually changed the perspectives of us designers and shifted our roles from this idea of being an individual designer towards cooperative practices and participatory models of design. And we're going to sort of look at some of these ideas. And I wanted to share, Ayushi, if you could share that slide now, please. I need it now. Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to talk about, the experience of Kashmir in relationship with the words of the people, the group that we were working with, facilitating. And uh, there are two kind of things that were really important for us, and Burhan will definitely elaborate on that. One is that this idea that this material, this paper mache, is actually is really amazing in the sense that it's not taking from nature directly, but it's actually a kind of recycling of paper that is already out there, right? So adding value to what we may think of as waste. And secondly, this idea that this what we really wanted to think about was that how do we bring people together, because there are two parts to this, the mold making and the painting, and how do you actually find ways of developing dialogues between the communities which can bring some kind of this idea of cooperative practice and uh, into being. And definitely, forming these cooperatives has been a really important part of the work, way beyond, I think, the importance of any kind of design development that we may have done. The and one of the interesting sort of components of the scheme was this idea that the artisans should get onboarded on an e-commerce platform. Economic sustainability has been a big issue, especially in Srinagar, because of reasons other of remoteness, conflict, lack of internet connectivity, and general isolation of people working all alone and not seeing anyone for days on end. Um, so and so while we haven't actually managed to do it yet, this is something that is something that we have as an objective for the next step of what happens in our work in this scheme, and we're still sort of working our way through it. And we'd like to also understand from our panelists today these ideas of economic sustainability, the importance of forming cooperatives, accessing expanded markets through the internet. How have these sort of experiences worked in other sort of parts of geographies, in other crafts, in other groups? So I'd like to invite first Burhan to talk a little bit more in detail about the challenges and issues with the paper mache cluster in Srinagar. Yeah, over to you, Burhan.
Thank you, Tanishka, for the great introduction, and hello, everybody. It's been exciting since yesterday to again have a look at the amazing sort of work that has been done, and to also interact with a lot of different people from different backgrounds. And today was amazing in the previous section to hear about the social issues and the amazing work of Devika as well. Without taking too much time, I'll just start to share my screen. Tanishka, can I share my screen so that we
Yes,
can?
you can go ahead.
Okay. Uh, can everybody see my screen?
You're visible. Perfect. Go on.
Okay, just a second. Okay. So I'll begin with I'm basically from NID myself. I graduated in product design in 2015. And I did a mix of things like you always do in NID. You experiment with many different things. I was mostly in the workshop, so and then initial few years are again hardcore industrial design. But again, you have a touch of like environmental perception and other courses which introduce you to craft and the way of life uh, in the villages. And there was something that connected me to these because I come from Kashmir and I've always seen those things and never really thought about it. But again, having met people like MP Ranjan and many different people in NID, I really got interested in crafts. And in my final year, I made the journey. I had the option to go for a regular internship in a mainstream industry, but I took a bike and then I came back to Kashmir to see what could be done. And the first thing I landed into was a place full of interesting things. It was really exciting for me to look at people living in certain ways, practicing their craft in a certain way, to look at their physical surroundings, but also at their mental perception of the place and the craft they were doing. So after coming back, I started working with crafts. We've all again worked with Ustad on a couple of workshops in Kashmir first, doing design and development workshop with the craftsmen of Meshi Craft. And then we did one workshop in NID, which was an amazing experience for all of the craftsmen because they got again exposed to newer ways of thinking, they met newer people, they got connected to so many different people, and then they started looking at their craft from a different perspective. I think that is an amazing thing which came out of the project. And again, one amazing thing which can teach us a different perspective to look at things. Then again, we came up with products which were again taking had the roots in our culture, but again in a new way with newer combinations and stuff like that. But today I will, but having said all that, I would focus on the bigger idea of sustainability that we have to touch in today's presentation. And this is something from my graduation project. I was looking and trying to look at the entire system of paper mache. And as you can see, there are two parts of the craft. One is the community of the pulp molders, which are the Sahtasas, and the other community are the Nakashi people who actually do the paintings on top of the paper pulp products. So while figuring out the system, I understood that there is a whole array of other people, other stakeholders around the system, and then who also play a role in the entire working of the craft. And it is very important to look in a systemic way to understand systemic issues in the system. In my graduation project, I realized, because I had to come up with an idea and try to do in design intervention, so I had looked at the pulp molders, because again, the problem in Kashmiri crafts right now is that we are living out of our legacy. Kashmiri crafts are being sold all around the world because of their legacy that they had, the work that has been done over the past few centuries. We are still living off of that in a certain way. And because of the difficult many decades, 2 3 decades now of instability, political instability and other factors, the workshop was broken, and the craft got stagnated. And then we've been trying to understand the underlying issues and trying to work and bring a new life into the craft itself. um, So again, talking about the paper mache crafts, it has primarily two parts. This is the paper pulp molding molders part, and then again on top of that they do beautiful decorations which make the products very special in a certain way. And then if you look at the craft in itself, talking about sustainability of the process, it's an amazing thing, because from crafts I learned quite a bit in terms of what sustainability is. You talk about people talk about sustainability these days in a very narrow manner, but sustainability is actually, I realized this much afterwards when I practiced all these things in my own life. Sustainability actually encapsulates your entire lifestyle, not just a part of the process that you're doing. But talking about the process and the craft process of papier mache in itself is very sustainable, in the sense that they use local recycled paper. The glue that they use, it's made out of rice, which is locally available. And again, they make products which are completely eco-friendly, in the sense that they can be put, and then they can be they can biodegrade very easily and quickly. There's no direct need of electricity. This is a big point, because we usually think we sort of take these things for granted, but this is an important fact, because living in a place like Kashmir, we have the challenges of not having electricity for days or weeks together. So, and people in the past have made peace with things like that you have these constraints around you. So how do you make work within your capacity and within your context? So I feel things like these are what makes craft special, that you're not dependent on too many things, and then you're creating something with minimal resources. And even the parts which are external to the craft, like the molds that the pulp molders need, they are made out of terracotta and eco-friendly materials, made by local people, local craftsmen, again generating more livelihood for other people as well. And then again, the waste that comes out of the paper mache workshop it's basically non-existent, because most of it is used, and there's no waste as such. And then in Nakashi, earlier, they use the surfacing materials which are all local. The brushes are handmade, but the paints right now come from outside. But again, they're trying to use lead-free paints. Earlier, they used to make their own pigments and paints, but that this is an again interesting point. Now they've shifted to poster colors. Earlier, they used to make their own colors, and again, now we are touching on why the craft is changing and why we need to adapt, because we are changing from the traditional process, and there's a reason and need for that. So I think, having said all of this, that the process in itself, it has a very low carbon footprint, and it's very important to understand, because most of the products we use today, which are industrial made, or whatever it is, they have a huge carbon footprint, and those costs are not put onto us, because most of these products are taxed properly. There are no carbon taxes, and that hides all the costs of low wages, of carbon emissions and things like that in the background. So all of that is hidden. But the beauty of the craft is it is contextual. It takes its context and environment in mind, and then produces products which are uh, very diverse. Again, all these things make Kashmiri paper mache very specific, and it's beautiful, and it has an identity. So again, the context, the constraints make things interesting, and they have a story in themselves. But this is something I want to maybe all of the other panelists also to look at, and maybe touch upon, is we are looking at economic sustainability and ecological sustainability. Um we try to look at crafts as something which needs to be preserved, and try to then form sustainable economic systems around that. But we also have to understand in what context, global context, we are working in. And while we try to focus on economic sustainability, we are looking at scalability. We say things should be like this, while in the crafts it could, they always say it could be like this. People are creative, and they think of newer opportunities within their context. But when you talk from the business perspective, the economic sustainability perspective of a free globalized economy, where there's competition, where there's everything in that sense, you talk about efficiency, that efficiency is first, and then you talk about diversity. You think about standardization first, and then about diversity of crafts and things like that, and opportunities. Like in today's world, I think we are making it's very foolish to say that everybody can do anything. I think it's a very false promise that is being made to everybody, that everybody can do anything, because unless and until we work with constraints, there's no meaning to us. And then people are more confused. You see, all the statistics say that people are more confused and dissatisfied today than they were 100 or 200 years back. And then again, the concept of linear and cyclic, where people used to think in a cyclic manner. They used to think about the entire cycle and how things continued in cycles. But today we are in a linear progress towards endless growth, which I think is very problematic in a certain sense. But again, if you look at crafts, if you understand their systems, like in Kashmir, it's beautiful to understand that craft and agriculture was always balanced. In the summers, people used to do agriculture, and in the winters, they used to focus on crafts, because you can't go outside, and it has snowed so much that you can't move around. So in the houses, you're still being creative and focused, and you feel good about it as well. People, when you look at craftsmen, they put everything into the craft, and then it is a sense of the stresses are relieved. They feel relevant, they feel connected, they have stories to tell. So everything, it's a beautiful package. But now that we are in the world that we are in, this free globalized economy, we really have to reposition today's crafts and think how we can balance local ecological sustainability, social sustainability, and also economic sustainability as we go forward. So not taking, I'll just take 2 more minutes, because I want to touch upon what we are doing. I've been working in Kashmir now for the past 5-6 years now, and a couple of years back I set up a Kashmir Innovation Lab, which again focuses on building a platform of creativity in Kashmir, to encourage new people to gather and put their energies in productive things in Kashmir. Again, because we can't always play victims. We have to sort of come together and figure out things for ourselves. We can't be always expecting, although everything has their own part. Policymakers have their own part to play. Government has its own part to play, but we people have our own part to play. As a designer, we are being, we have the tools and the methods to put together a system which sort of accelerates that change. And then we've been working with schools, and we also do a little bit of permaculture, and we bring together people from different expertise, different backgrounds, so that there's diversity of thought, and then we think things through, and then also make products, and try to integrate crafts in the products, and figure out newer ways of doing things, basically. And yeah, this is all we've been doing. And this is again paper mache crafts. I've been working on sound systems for quite a while now, and these are Bluetooth speakers made out of paper mache, and these were exhibited at Rock Collaborative also. And then this shows where the crafts for tomorrow could go. And we need to push the boundaries of the crafts, instead of being just something for a niche audience, to something which is widely accepted and normalized in the in the coming future. While doing all of this, also doing mapping of crafts, so that we are understanding where everything is going. And again, to make a community of people who are at least talking about those things, and they are coming forward to actively engage, to work in their context and figure out the solutions to the problems they have. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Burhan. Rebecca, may I ask you to go next, because I think it would be really interesting. You're somebody who has been doing a lot of these things for quite a long while now, or Burhan is hinting at, and it'd be lovely to hear from you about your experiences.
You have to unmute also, Rebecca.
You're on mute, Rebecca.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
So I just thought I'd borrow from a small presentation as Burhan was speaking, because I thought that it would just go quite well with what he was saying. So I just wanted to tell you about my journey. So straight out of NID, I started working with the development sector with a multi-governmental NGO, and we were working with bamboo. And that's when I realized there's a huge gap between markets and producers, and designers are the necessary, not so evil middlemen who need to exist, and who deserve to be paid if they do their job. And if they don't deserve to be paid at all. So what I realized is that, so on one side you have this material and you have these exquisite products which are full of material culture and cultural relevance. Now nobody wants to buy these anymore because these guys think that urban people are cool. So what do these guys do? They start making things which they think urban people want. And of course, they are not as sorted as the centuries that went into forming these ones. So there are some hippie kind of products which are sticky, jammy, bad finished. So the buyers think that craft and the material is then cheap. And so they ask these guys to make the price lower and they make even more cheap products. So this is like an endemic problem with craft. On the other hand, you have designers who come in, don't want to deal with this whole thing, come in from the sustainability perspective, pick up a material, say bamboo, do these fantastic things, but now these guys can't make these things. So this is also a problem. So these guys are on their track, these guys are on their track. So I wanted to look for a sweet spot in the middle. So the sweet spot for me long ago was sustainability. And I was thrilled in 2010 when the Harvard Business Review declared sustainability as the emerging megatrend. That's 2010. So it's like a decade later. And everyone is on board because climate change is, permanent. Consumers want to save themselves. Companies are interested to sell to consumers, investors are interested, governments are putting down regulatory framework, and the media is covering. So everybody is really on board. Recent studies actually show that 66% of consumers are willing to pay more for sustainable products in 2015. So if design was to target sustainability, it would be looking at 66% more consumers, whether or not craft was included in it. And obviously, people who have a lot of deep pockets to sink money into this are looking at this as a serious, lucrative way to make money, even if there are people like H&M who do some unconscious, conscious stuff. And IKEA has these sustainability reports every year. I don't know how much they do, but they're at least proclaiming they do it. So it's something de rigueur now. Everyone's supposed to be doing it. Also, what's interesting is the expanding scope of sustainability itself. So in the 70s, it was all about the ecological sustainability. Then in the 80s, it became about also looking at social and economic factors in sustainable development. Then it came to, putting this in some kind of a balance. And now culture is a very important part of sustainability. So there's an opportunity actually for craft here and for all people who want to work with craft, and all of us should because it's lucrative, not as do-gooders, for products that are actually made like this and sell to these markets. So that's what we look at Rhizome. So we look at an opportunity to mainstream sustainability through crafted products because of the cultural legacy. We look at bamboo and other renewable materials, so the ecological aspect. We make sure they're produced by communities, so the social aspect, and we make sure that they're in line with commercially viable markets, so economically sustainable. So we don't just design a product, we design all of the production to consumption systems. So we think of where the materials come from and we think of how the end of life is as well. So with craft, you have a sweet spot. So you have the craftspeople, you have the skill, you have the tradition, and you have the resource, right? And craft is a fantastic thing for the development of underdeveloping countries or developing countries because it uses a lot of material and it uses a productive labor force, okay? So what happens when you take the tradition out of craft? Because a lot of people are working with craft and they're removing the traditional part of craft and they're just looking at a producer base with a skill and a resource. Okay, so totally decontextualizing it. What happens is that you become just another one of those value chains. So whenever countries industrialize, what they do is first people sell their raw materials, then they think what are the other guys buying the raw materials and doing, they're making some stuff. Then they get into manufacturing, then they're like, okay, so who gives these directions, and then they get into innovation. So if you're just looking at production, Bangladesh is going to come along, and after Bangladesh, something else is going to come along. Like Africa is just waiting to develop. So you can't just look at production, you have to look at innovation in craft. And it just shows that a lot of things are imported and exported, which are very low value products. So a possible strategy for developing countries with regards to sustainability is using renewable materials, which craft almost always uses, using labor, which we have in the form of craftspeople, using markets because we have these abundant countries, and you add innovation and tap into new emerging markets. So what we've been doing is use what we do best, that's tradition, and do something better. So for example, this is something that we did in Tripura with a cluster who could only make fish traps. So it was one of those ill-planned 15-day DCH workshop who just gives you a brief and in 15 days you're supposed to make something miraculous. So what we did is we just truncated this fish trap and made spa accessories because that was the brief, and we still get orders for this today. So this is something that we did in Myanmar. Okay, but what I wanted to tell you was that innovation in craft can actually help you make a paradigm shift. So this is the Kotwalia community. So they make these kind of baskets. They're from South Gujarat. We started working with an NGO there who was doing some kind of badly developed furniture like this. But innovation can make you make the paradigm shift from this kind of a product to this. So why is this product so cool compared to this product? So first of all, from the viewpoint of sustainability, I'm not even going to talk about design, I'm just going to talk about sustainability. From the viewpoint of sustainability, bamboo is not a cylinder, it's a cone. So you can never have a chair with 4 equal legs. By turning this on the lathe, you standardize, okay? You save material because you've structurally cleaned this up. So this textile which we used is a tie-up with a denim mill in Ahmedabad. So we have used ecologically sustainable materials. We have involved women because they can weave this from their houses. We've involved another community of weavers. We have involved somebody else who's going to color the bamboo and cover the discrepancies of the Indian bamboo because it's not as sacrosanctly farmed as the Chinese one. So this is what you can actually do. So what we are looking at is using craft as a vehicle for holistic sustainability through design to dovetail with the creative and cultural economy. And I mean, this is the growing economy across the world. And from the viewpoint of sustainability, this is what we are supposed to be looking at. I mean, all of this, which is what we talk about in design. And, the creative goods are just exported by China when we have so many craft groups. So we need to think about this as designers, that what is going on here, I developed something called the rhizome framework actually to decode craft into pointers for design. So basically we have 3 directions. One is looking at craft as art. So this is an installation we did for a resort in Gir using terracotta lanterns. Yeah, so some more installations. The second is to align craft with more high street stuff. So like say the Zara of craft, which is where we get our bread and butter from. So these are all bamboo chairs that we sell on our website. So it's very mainstream, but crafted. And the last is prosumer, where we look at the producer and the consumer as one kind of demographic. So this is something we did for Harvard incubated setup. It's called Barkat Bundle. And we did these cradles for children in Southeast Asia. So these are bamboo cradles for children which can fold and go onto bikes. So when the mother delivers, you give her this package thing which is totally folded and she takes it home and then she takes care of her baby. And it has a lot of other stuff like sanitary napkins, and it has the sensory toy which is also handmade. So essentially this is kind of an ideology, and this is what we do at Rhizome. We also do believe that, I'm just going to run through it, Kanishka, because I know that we also do believe that you really need to make your story as credible as possible, because sustainability is such a big deal right now that everybody is jumping onto this bandwagon. We really do believe you need to transition from branding onto labeling. I'm not going to talk much about this because I know Shreya is going to talk about this, but what we did do way back in 2012 was do a certification for the government of Vietnam and UNIDO on assessing sustainability for the handicraft sector. So again, we seem to have woken up really late to this in India. Like a little country like Vietnam was already doing this in 2012. So what we did is we have the ecological, social, economic, and cultural factors, and we have a mechanism to assess this, and we do realize that it's very difficult to assess. So do you assess the producer? Do you assess the product? Do you assess the company? Do you assess the region? So we worked out all of that for the Vietnamese government, and so this is finally the application of it. So essentially, this is what we think is the future for sustainability in craft. And yeah, I'm going to stop there.
Thanks, Rebecca. Without much ado, I'll pass on to Shreya to tell us about Craftmark Green and the role it can play.
Thanks, Tanishka, for the opportunity. And Rebecca, thank you. You've given me the perfect cue to segue into talking about certification and the role that it can play in benchmarking and ascertaining sustainability in the craft system in India. Sustainability is a buzzword in the sector, and within the existing concepts of natural capital, the circular economy, the 100-mile community, the cradle to grave kind of an approach, there are various frameworks that one has been exposed to over the years. What is important to remember is that what are the particular challenges of application of sustainable principles across craft practices, given the sheer diversity, differences in scale, and the unorganized or particularly organized nature of craft practice. And why particularly is this the right time to raise such questions now? Want to set a bit of a context by saying that India's traditional handicrafts and handloom sectors have always had the attributes of a green economy, whether they have been labeled as such or not, with their USP of being local, indigenous, culturally rooted, low energy driven, and socially and economically enabling for communities who have held these knowledge systems for centuries. You know, we've had discussions before this by other panelists on the intersections between craft and anthropology. This makes the sector ideally placed to compete in environment conscious markets across the world. What is needed is an assessment and recognition of the sector as green. Measuring and ensuring compliance in the handicraft sector, however, is a big challenge because of the particular nature of organization in the sector, amongst others. But we also know that textiles, leather tanning, pottery, clay crafts, as well as metal-based craft processes cause significant air and water pollution. The need is to incentivize and facilitate green production in the handicrafts and handloom space through access and availing of technical capacity building and solutions, adoption of market-recognized green business standards, the promotion and branding for responsible value-added green businesses, and access to finance, most importantly, to invest in green processes. The handicrafts and handloom industries need to be mobilized to proactively adapt and responsibly practice environmentally friendly methods of manufacturing. ICA's green approach aims at all of the above. Many of you may be aware that ICA has been working on issues of environmental and economic sustainability in the craft sector over the past few years. The Craftmark certification, which has enabled economic and social sustainability of craft businesses for its certified members, is now in the process of adding a third handle on environmental sustainability related to energy use, water use, use of hazardous chemicals, waste management, raw materials, packaging, afterlife, etc. Craftmark Green program seeks to establish a robust certification system through research and direct interventions called Craftmark Green, which will cater to producers, buyers, consumers, and the crafts industry as a whole in the long run. At least that is what our ambitions for the framework are. Basic approaches that inform our green interventions include the undertaking of material research across the various craft materials to identify areas of sustainability and unsustainability, the developing of a standard-setting framework along the pre-production, production, and post-production phases of the particular craft practice, piloting these standards across different craft clusters across the country, which have demonstrated interest and have a capacity for some scale, a localized, largely localized value chain, and an appetite for reaching new markets, raising visibility and financing for scaling these pilots. Currently, we are completing our work on standard setting for textiles, clay, and metals with field pilots in Rajasthan, Odisha, and Gujarat with craft communities. I want to end my submission with a few key insights and questions that we are grappling with in our research and practice in the Green Project. One is the whole concern about demystifying issues of sustainability in craft communities we work in. We walk in sometimes with the best of intents, with a lot of jargon, a lot of fancy operational frameworks and parameters, and we fail to recognize the rootedness and the sustainability that is often inherent in many of these clusters themselves. So the question really is, how do we incorporate often ingrained understanding and sense of sustainable practice and production with operable and measurable frameworks? In our pilot at Javaja with leather artisans, we have been working with practice that inculcates the traditional process of vegetable bag tanning using babul bark. All the steps in the making of the product, from the cutting of the leather with the rappi, stitching and glazing the surface with the glass bottle, are completely hand done with the use of simple tools. The water used in tanning at Javaja is disposed of after a single use to nearby land without pre-treatment of the effluent and is considerable in volume in terms of usage. We felt that this was a point of entry for conversations on sustainability, focused primarily on the aspects of water use and recycling, at the same time trying to standardize the already existing process of tanning that was inherently sustainable. So how do you look at carrying forward sustainable practices, and how do you look at adding value? The other question that is constantly up for discussion at our end is that what considerations drive enterprises and organizations to look at sustainable solutions that address both economic and environmental concerns, not one at the cost of another? How do artisan enterprises negotiate this balance as technical resource organizations? How do we help this negotiation? And we find this a very, very crucial question to ask of ourselves and our motives, particularly in a post-COVID environment, where would the search for environmental sustainability of an artisan's livelihood compromise long-term environmental sustainability for the practice? Our conversations with various artisan clusters across the country who practice sustainable means of production and have an interest in scaling and standardizing these practices have revealed post-COVID a situation of widespread economic distress, a cancellation of orders, piling up of inventory, and a liquidity crunch. For the now, their immediate concern is of livelihoods and economic revival. Hence, any ongoing strategy on sustainability needs to be mindful of this balance between the economic and the environmental, especially among smaller artisans and enterprises that we work with. I think one of the aims of the mandate of Craftmark as a certification has been to help these smaller groups better access new and emerging markets by positioning the handmadeness of their craft processes and using that as a leverage to gain economic dividend. Craftmark Green, we feel, is many steps ahead. And as Rebecca also had mentioned, putting in place and institutionalizing a certification of this nature, one needs to be constantly cognizant of the fact that we are not unnecessarily complicating or adding another layer of encumbrance on what is already quite a distressed sector. How do the benefits of certification percolate to smaller craft organizations and, also strengthen their sustainability initiatives in a certain way? So these are some of the things that we are left with, and the work is very much in progress. And we've in fact finished a body of work on textile standard setting, and we are all set to launch it on our app. The work on clay and metals is in progress and moving interestingly. In fact, we have a couple of people from NID who are advisory board members in the standard setting process. And it's interesting, it's constant churning, and one hopes that more and more such conversations continue to take place in the future. Thank you, Tanishka.
Thanks, Shreya. I think that was really important, kind of, to think about what you said about, in the current situation, the interplay between economic viability that people need to have, and ecological impact is really important. And I'd like, Shakti, if you could maybe share your sort of experience on this, being from, and especially I was just thinking when Shreya was talking about the use of water, in dyeing and textiles. That's one of the biggest kind of issues that people have been sort of grappling with. So yeah, over to you.
Sorry. Thank you, Tanishka. What I will do is I'll share the screen. Okay, this one. Yeah. Share. Okay. So what I was thinking is that we work on. Oh, where do I go like this? Now. Okay. So, can you see?
Yes, Shakti, it's visible.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's full screen.
Full screen. Yeah. Yeah. So I was thinking, rather than I talk specifically only about dyes and their impact. Of course, it's too big to handle, because textile industry as such is one of the largest polluting industry as of now, which uses fresh water and throws out all the water it has taken as a effluent to be treated and probably not to be used by human beings again. So I was thinking that when we are talking about craft practices and sustainability, I thought of five triumphs that we normally need to um, understand or to put together. So somewhere, though I'll be showing nature uh, in different places or mostly from Meghalaya, that how these are important parts of a trian that one sees at in terms of in relation to craft and sustainability. So the first trian is between where partners are the nature, the people, and the resultant, which is knowledge. So if this cycle continues, normally the one figures out the craft as a separate entity, people who practice the craft, and the knowledge that comes out of the this thing. It cycles or spirals. As long as it continues, it sustains. Not only the craft sustains the practice and people, and so the knowledge. The When we talk of craft practices, the place and the climatic conditions are so important that it is these part of nature that actually feeds us with the material. When the nature feeds us with material which is available in so nearby, that we try and figure out ways to work with them, which is actually knowledge. Now maybe we can call it science or technology or resources and production or something, but mostly it is these material that drive the craft. The availability of these material determine both the quality, quantity, and sustenance of that particular craft. And sometimes they can really make havoc. So, one such example is that these are cotton that are not grown by other like the mainland India. This place doesn't grow cotton by having irrigated land. These are grown on hill slopes where they are not there because it is irrigated. It is unirrigated land. That itself is a biggest saver in that sense of yeah, larger ecosystem. The other thing is the eri silk, which is growable, doable just at any of your backyard, because all you need is the eri plant and some seed cocoons. Muga, it is still wild. Though it is cultivated, it is cultivable only in forest as a ecosystem. So it still, as a, both as a material and as a practice, it probably supports the systems that are key to both the environment and culture in this particular case. So sometimes you also get so much of diversity just out of material that is available. Sometimes when we think that, oh, we don't have anything else other than cotton in textiles, you guys don't do anything other than cotton in textile. You guys, sometimes we feel that our material vocabulary seem to be so small, but when actually we one looks into it, the as the vocabulary of the particular material grows, then you find different varieties, different qualities, different specific properties of material. But all these actually come from the interaction between the people and the nature. I think this is the best ever example of. Sorry, I'm not going ahead. Yeah. So this is the best example of what I call as the interaction between nature and man, where there is something meaningful the man is making for himself, or the human beings, the craftsperson is making for the society or community, where nature is being worked with. Here this is that famous double decker tree bridge in Meghalaya, where people normally work for more than 200 years to make one, but in reality what happens is that the tree grows like a bridge. So it is not only embodiment of culture and an attitude of, this is for me, this is craft. Whereas you have the nature, but you also have the respect for everything else other than your need also. So but at the same time, it's not all rosy and nice, but there is an attitude to nature. So this is the forest being cleared for June to cultivate cotton actually. But then they have to cut so much of trees. How is it sustainable? But if it is practiced in certain, this is where we need what I call the how matters in this scenario, is that how much and what can you do matters a lot, because you exactly know what to do and what not to do. So, but at the end of the day, it is the bread and the forest there, or the nature forest there, is the bread and butter of people. They are dependent on the forest. Now, and the outcome of the forest, whatever they find in the forest, right from cotton that they could grow on hill slopes, or the muga that they can grow in the forest, or the pineapple fiber that they could work with. So people find ways and means to work within the area, not only the product, but also the tools that they need to work with comes from their own environment. It's you just pick up your everything from your environment, including the tools, and you also respond so creatively to your own available resources. I think normally in other places where warping is needed, you need a long length of place where you can do a warping. Where I find this so innovative. Why crafts people are innovative is this, that this just the courtyard at the top of a hill this woman has. There is no length, so that length became a spiral now. So at the same time, the diversity of things that one can make, I'm sure this Rebecca has already talked about. This is bamboo again, but different people work for different purposes and make different things altogether for their own needs. So the material has in itself an embedded quality, the same way like the ethnobotany of plants, where people just buy these things from jungle and they can make their own medicine. It's the doctor's place in a heart. So finally, the dyeing. So for normally any dyeing normally wastes a lot of water because it colors, and the color doesn't go off from water, it goes off from the fabric. Every time that anyone has a dyed thing, everyone has a complaint that my shirt bleeds. But the problem is every dyer has the same complaint that my water doesn't bleed, my water doesn't get discolored. So dyer is one of the person that one normally hates to be, because um, you pollute the environment like none other in the whole world, because you take all chemicals available, whether it is natural from nature or not, they are chemicals, and they can cause disruption in the balance of both earth and water. So in that way that we do pollute, both in form of natural dyes as well as in form of synthetic dyes. But what one could definitely look at is how sensitive and sensible we are in handling this issue, that how much can I go, and how much can, this is another example of cutting trees to make bark cloth. If we have to cut the tree, then it's actually not sustainable. But what is, as I said, what's important is how much and why. Because in today's scenario, we are all talk of market. Market consumes the people, the attitude to nature is not same as attitude to product. Attitude to product is to consume. Anything that's available needs to be consumed. Unless we are going to think of reduced appetite in the market, which we are not going to in any case, that it's going to be difficult for us to show the value of craft. That's the reason why craft will have a sustainable value, is because of its sheer less speed that the normal market or normal production systems cannot come down to. So that's another thing that we really need to understand and appreciate. The other thing is that it's part of, when we talk of any kind of sustainability, that we talk of sustainability in terms of only in terms of environment and not an entire ecosystem where that process is also part of generating a culture, keeping something, keeping a practice of a culture somewhere related to people. The moment the practice ceases to be part of people or part of culture, it becomes an object. So the moment it becomes an object, people are going to buy it and people are going to do whatever they want. So then neither the culture nor the product nor the process is going to be sustainable. So what is important key to also do sustainability is the attitude and approach to what one is doing. Like here, if you can see, there is no difference between the in this women to either cook a meal for them because you want exactly the amount that you want to eat. You don't want to waste your resources just because you have say 10 kilos of rice. You can't cook all 10 kilos of rice in a day. At the same way, even if you have the whole forest, you don't want to pick up everything from the forest and finish off dying in a day. So they just pick up the amount that one needs. Like here, if you see, she is holding that particular plant leaves handful. That's all one needs. So that's an attitude. That's an not only an attitude, it's a measurement, right? So it serves both as a measurement as well as a culture to save certain things. This is what you need to do. The same way, look at the all they do is to prepare things with so much care that because I am going to use it. So the same care has to go if my neighbor is going to use what I'm making. So there is a sense of love and care, which I think no other production system has. I think only when one has these two aspects together, then we have this as a thing. So, which is what I was talking about in this is the material, skill, and product. There is this another triad. The other triad of sustainability is resource production and market, because if all of these things are within a range and within a place, it really works out. So the but it can also go haywire in terms of how one can one handles the resources around for the market. So the other triangle is people, science, and technology, because then one figures out their own tools and technology that one works with. These are all things that they make themselves. Craftsmen do not need to purchase a product to be used to make certain things. So there is a local kind of an ecosystem that a craft has. And I think it's very important to look at those things. And also the craftsman doesn't have anything else. The dyer is not going to be shy of getting used to wear his own. He can't complain that my color fades because you are the one who dyes. So
Shakti, could I request you to wrap up and
yeah. So basically, the sustaining of this thing is about the to care knowingly with a specific kind of an approach and this thing to uh, your ecosystem and your working area and working system and the market in a larger sense, but it has various other layers like people, culture, and identity. It has material, skill, and product, and it also has at the end how nature becomes knowledge. Nature, people make something and develop knowledge out of it. So as long as all these triumphs work hand in hand, it works, like sustenance of the knowledge of rice cultivation amongst these slopes, or is actually contained in a form of uh, a dance and performance in Garo Hills, and which has specific needs for textiles, colors, everything. It's a culmination, in a sense that it can't be seen as one or two things that are separate, but they needs to be looked into as culmination of many different disciplines, and this thing that a craftsman and the people around make meaningful learning from nature. I think what is missing in today's time is how do we bring this kind of awareness to the market space so that they will have similar appreciation and be aware of what's happening. Yeah. Yeah, Tanishka, done.
Thank you. Thanks, Shakti. Yeah, I think, some of the questions that we have, and now we sort of quickly take few questions, are also to do with this idea of, how the market responds to, these complex ideas of sustainability, or doesn't kind of take them into account. And in fact, my colleague, I'll open with a question from my colleague, Swagata, who's chairing the next session. She asked me to read it out for everyone. And she was asking that, why does sustainability usually mean higher costs in the contemporary market, especially, and become an elite concept? It's an open question. Any of you would like to take
Yeah,
it?
so I can answer that. In general, when we are trying to introduce sustainability to firms, this is the resistance we have. They tell us that, you know, um, a sustainable consumers have the mindset that a sustainable product is either more expensive or underperforming. So these are the two ideas. If it's something like a washing powder, it's not going to wash as cleanly as like a mainstream. And if it's something which is like a premium quality thing, it's going to be much more expensive, like say a food or something like that. And nobody can afford to buy 5 kgs of rice at the cost that sustainable rice is. So, I mean, this actually comes from a space where sustainability is not mainstreamed, and where things that are not sustainable are allowed to be mainstreamed. And this can only go away when sustainability is mainstreamed. And for this, you need, I mean, how do you like, Shreya was also asking this question, how do you make people buy sustainable stuff? Two ways, the carrot and the stick. The stick from the government, that's policy, and the carrot, that is great design, great marketing, and great products, and actually certification. As a consumer, certification is so important because I need to know that it's actually something sustainable. It needs to be amazing. It needs to be well designed, and I need to know that there is no cheaper alternative which can only be done by the government. If instead of labeling everything sustainable, if the government just spent time labeling things unsustainable, it would solve a lot of problems for a lot of us, because that would be a really quick process.
Thanks, Rebecca. Great way to look at it. Let's mark out the bad stuff first.
Yeah.
I'm going to read out another question. This one is from Priyanka Sangi, from our participant. She's asking, one crossway we as millennials stand on is budget versus choices. Even though I appreciate sustainable and handcrafted object, I might not always have enough money in my pocket or security of a stable home, since we are moving so often, to invest in these valuable objects. Is there a way to bridge this gap between cheap, mass-produced, machine-made objects versus handcrafted, unique objects?
Um, is there a way to bridge this gap? I mean, it's just a question of choice and also a question of designers not selling stuff. I mean, the whole expense comes from stuff and the service of design. So instead of selling stuff, if you sell an experience, it's how you position your product really, and how you design to sell nothing, to make nothing valuable. Even in our textiles, we have this idea of embroidery. bharna, like stuff things into it. Like literally, it's like adding weight, and weight is associated with value. So when you reduce material, you make design structurally better. It's actually a lower cost product, and it's actually cheaper. So the whole idea of value with resources or value with process, which is interlinked, needs to be kicked out through design. And that's the only way that value and material and labor and material costs can move apart. It's only then that this is going to happen.
I just add to this.
Yeah, Shreya, go ahead.
I also want to, it's an interesting choice of words coming from a young person, this whole question of choice, because you might also, I mean, in the whole spectrum of the various choices that you make in your everyday life, you would also choose to walk into a Starbucks and pay for a coffee for 300 rupees. You would also choose to buy a book, an expensive graphic novel for an X amount of money. But you would balk at the idea of buying something that is handmade for a slightly higher rate, simply because one does not understand the value of the processes and the kind of skill that go into the making of this object. And somewhere in the popular imagination, I think it is a collective failure on our parts that we have forgotten how to position or place handcrafted items as items to be valued and cherished and located in a certain way. And I think, to add on to what Rebecca was saying, I think a very concerted effort to look at and very creative investments on how to reposition handcrafted goods, particularly now post-COVID. I keep going back to it like a broken gramophone. But with the decline in consumer sentiment and the collapse of, markets everywhere, the need of the hour is to look at repositioning handmade items a little more creatively.
And
So that,
Shreya, I think that you're using this word handmade. I think that the biggest problem I see is this whole idea of handmade and handicraft and the overlapping of these two things. And that everybody thinks that, like if it was an Italian handmade product, they would shell out for this. But if it's like a handicraft item,
that's what I'm saying. It is about how we value and we position handmade in our own lexicon, despite having such a rich history and culture behind it.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm going to end with just reading out Amanda's. I think it's more a sort of a comment rather than a question, asking for links of how people can support these initiatives and how we could share ideas, skills, or support through purchase. So that's amazing. And that really tells me that we really need to put more effort into building platforms for economic opportunities for this sector, for people and their innovations. There's a lot more that needs to be done in that area. And I think, that's going to kind of lead us into what the next panel is about. It's about entrepreneurship. So thank you, all my co-panelists. And please do stay around for the next panel as well. And we can have a lively question answer at the end of day amongst ourselves as well. So over to you, Bindu.
Thank you, Tanishka. A lovely one, a very, very important session. Sustainability, and to have it more sustainable. And in very interestingly, the last two questions were somewhere leading to entrepreneurship and management. And I think, all being a designer myself, I do acknowledge what Rebecca was saying and what Shreya was saying. But how do we take it forward? How do we get it done? How do we do that? And I think that will be addressed in the next session, market and management and entrepreneurship. And I read out just background of it. In the absence of holistic approach between the creation and the marketing of the craft products, a significant number of newly developed craft products fail to see the light of the commercial markets. So is the sustainable products also. The real challenge thus lies in being able to link the new products to market, wherein the host of marketing and management related issues need to be addressed for effectively conveying the products to their designated targets audience and converting them into a commercial success. The proposed discussion will offer insights into domains that would elevate craft-based products and services to the next level. This will be taken by Swagata Naidu, who is a senior. Swagata, you want to take it over? Running short of time, I was about to tell about you.
Yeah, I can. I think we can start with me.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
मैं आप सबका इस तीसरे और आखिरी सेशन इस दिन के आखिरी सेशन में आपका स्वागत करती हूँ और I will thank my panel members Sarika Samdani, Mohammad Sharik Faruqi and Sonam Tashi and my audience who have joined today in this discussion. Can I request the hosts to pin the four panel members together here? हम इस डिस्कशन की शुरुआत एक छोटे से प्रेजेंटेशन से करेंगे और इस प्रेजेंटेशन के थ्रू मैं आपको अपने क्लस्टर के बारे में थोड़ा बताना चाहती हूँ। मैंने फिरोज़ाबाद ग्लास फ्रेमवर्क का क्लस्टर हेड किया था उस्ताद स्कीम के तहत और इसमें हमने जिस तरीके से डिज़ाइन इंटरवेंशन का इस्तेमाल किया है उसके बारे में मैं थोड़ा सा बताना चाहूँगी। ये प्रेजेंटेशन ख़त्म होने के बाद में मैं हर पैनल मेंबर को यहाँ पे इनवाइट करके और उनसे उनका इंट्रोडक्शन के लिए रिक्वेस्ट करूँगी। विनीता, कैन यू प्लीज प्ले द प्रेजेंटेशन? कैन यू शेयर द स्लाइड? Can you make it full screen, please? जब तक प्रेजेंटेशन शेयर होता है तब तक मैं आपको जल्दी से बता दूं कि फिरोज़ाबाद का ग्लास फ्रेमवर्क क्लस्टर की छोटी सी हिस्ट्री क्या है। ग्लास फ्रेमवर्क क्लस्टर is situated in this historical city called Firozabad, which is about 30 kilometers away from Agra, and Agra is in western UP. It's a popular tourist destination and also marketplace for all the crafts and artisans from surrounding areas and from far across in the state of UP. Originally, ये जो जगह है यहाँ पे ग्लास बीड्स ऐसा माना जाता है कि ग्लास हमारे देश में बहुत बाद में आया है, बट ऐसा नहीं है। ग्लास बीड्स इस एरिया में 2000 साल से पाए जाते हैं और इस रीजन में ग्लास बीड्स करीब 400 साल पहले इंट्रोड्यूस किए गए यूजिंग द प्रिमिटिव इंडिजिनस फर्नेसेस कॉल्ड भैंसा भट्टी. These were furnaces where molten glass was used to make beads, initial beads. That practice has changed. Now we have glass furnaces or glass torches, which are used for creating very, very beautiful objects. So this craft is also practiced both by Hindus and Muslim artisans. Vinita, could you please share the presentation? So through the project, what our team tried and understand the personal style of styles of artisans, because artisans are not just producers, they have their own styles. They're artists to begin with, and trying to understand their socioeconomic circumstances that affect their decisions. Now, their decisions are not based on their craft practice alone, but by a lot of other things that that happen around them, that they're living through on a daily basis. We try to understand what their health and economic concerns were because of the craft practices, considering the craft requires them to stay exposed in front of naked flame and high temperatures for many hours, 8 to 10 hours sometimes a day, sitting in a dark room without any air or ventilation, because they're working with flames and they can't have air around them. So we were trying to understand how that impacts a person. And apart from that, the usual studies which were related to market response, product ranges, loopholes in the market buyer and craft network, and so on. So our first response, which we tried and implement through our first workshop, which happened in Firozabad, was to understand or evaluate the level of skill, openness to new ideas, ability to visualize and understand each person's personal experience of working, apart from other things in the first part. This analysis of experience of the first workshop and studying the user requirements market for an appropriate niche where the products of this craft can be visualized, we moved on to the second stage, which is usually the ideating stage, where we experimented with new tools, with new materials, and also we tried and to see how the skills of artisans could be stretched. We introduced them to different mediums through which they could visualize. We also introduced standardization practices. So we held sessions where we tried and talk about quality standardization and neatness in work and things like that with people. And the third workshop, in the third workshop, we moved on to finalizing the ranges. But apart from that, we also tried to see how this can be made market ready for the future. And we were trying to see how to integrate practices which are used in the contemporary market or in the new business systems, which can be given to the artisans to upgrade themselves in terms of conducting a business, because they are, apart from being craftspersons, they also are business people. In fact, a craftsperson is expected to know everything, right from designing to making to selling to dealing with people. So we were trying to see if there were some skills that we could impart for that might be helpful for the artisan to take forward and deal with some markets which are not part of their own lifestyles. The thing with craft is that most of the traditional crafts were started to address a need within their immediate surroundings. This craft did not start like this. It's an acquired craft which started as a livelihood option about 100 years back, 80 to 100 years back. And it has always been it has been passed on through the apprenticeship model. So we were trying to, and it has tried to upgrade itself to the requirements of the market. And that's what we were trying to do for the current market, for today's times, and the way transaction happens online, or the viewing platforms or visibility platforms or buying platforms have also gone online, and so on. This experience, once the workshops got over, when we were reflecting on our experience, we found gaps in the way the role of design or designer or design intervention is kind of conventional in its nature. It's absolutely invaluable, the kind of inputs a designer is giving to the community or the way they engage. But is that the only thing that's required to create a long-term sustainable impact, which benefits not just an individual, but as a collective for the entire community? With that, can I request Vinita to stop sharing this slideshow? Thank you. Not taking any more time talking about the kind of work we have done, I would want to invite Sarika. So we have our panelists here from different regions of the country. हमारे साथ में सारिका हैं सिलीगुड़ी से, सोनम है सिक्किम से, गैंगटॉक से, और शारिक हैं दिल्ली से. और मैं इनवाइट करती हूँ सारिका को अपने बारे में थोड़ा अपने बारे में कुछ बताने के लिए, और आपने जो काम किया है, एक्सपीरियंस किया है अलग अलग क्राफ्ट सेक्टर्स में इस देश के, और उनके साथ में बहुत लंबे एसोसिएशंस बना के रखने के, छोटे जैसे कि यूजुअली हमारा डिजाइनर्स का एसोसिएशन होता है किसी भी क्राफ्ट सेक्टर का, कुछ हफ्तों का, कुछ महीनों का, उसकी जगह पे एक पूरे डेकेड का। आप थोड़ा सा उसके बारे में बताइए प्लीज। सारिका, आपको अनम्यूट करना पड़ेगा। थैंक्स।
गुड इवनिंग एवरीबॉडी। आप सबको मेरा नमस्कार। थोड़ा सा मैं अपने काम के बारे में बताने से पहले अपने बारे में बताती हूँ। मैं भी एनआईडी की ग्रेजुएट हूँ। काफ़ी सारे पैनलिस्ट में देख रही थी पहले भी, और अभी इस सेशन में भी काफ़ी एनआईडी के पैनलिस्ट हैं। So, I mean, I think that is one of the institute which has really worked a lot in the craft sector and the people from it. तो एनआईडी से मैंने ग्राफिक डिज़ाइन में स्पेशलाइजेशन किया था, और 2003 से एज ए ग्रेजुएट आई हैव बीन वर्किंग इन, and my area of work has been not limited to graphic design or communication design, because I have been interested in the larger development sector. And तो जिस तरह के प्रोजेक्ट्स मैंने किए हैं, तो अधिकतर मेरा काम रूरल बेस्ड ही रहा है, और काफ़ी सारे इश्यूज को टच किया है अलग अलग प्रोजेक्ट्स में, हेल्थ से लेकर के सैनिटेशन, एजुकेशन, क्राफ्ट डेवलपमेंट, लाइवलीहुड trainings of the health workers. So it has been a journey with wearing different hats, कि कभी डिजाइनर की टोपी है, तो कभी प्रोग्राम मैनेजर की टोपी है, कभी मार्केटिंग पर्सन की टोपी है, और काफ़ी मेरा लंबा एसोसिएशन रहा है एक क्राफ्ट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को मैनेज करने में, जो कि उत्तराखंड में बेस्ड थी। तो उस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के साथ में काफ़ी सालों से जुड़ी थी। और जिस तरह की हम लोग अभी पुराने सेशंस में भी मैं सुन रही थी, बात कर रहे थे कि कैसे इसको सस्टेनेबल बनाया जाए, और सस्टेनेबिलिटी के साथ साथ इकोनॉमिक वायबिलिटी, बिकॉज जो भी क्राफ्ट सेक्टर में काम करते हैं, हमें ये नहीं भूलना है कि सेंटर हम किसके लिए काम कर रहे हैं। एट द कोर इज द आर्टिजन्स, एट द कोर इज द क्राफ्ट पीपल। तो अगर जब तक इकोनॉमिकली वायबल नहीं होगा, तो हम उसमें और कितने भी आयाम जोड़ते जाएं, चाहे सस्टेनेबिलिटी का हो, चाहे कॉस्टिंग का हो, या चीपर प्रोडक्ट्स, एक्सपेंसिव प्रोडक्ट्स, वो कभी भी सक्सेसफुल शायद मेरे अनुभव से नहीं हो पाएगा, क्योंकि जब तक जो आपका कोर जो सेंटर है, अगर वो ही इकोनॉमिकली उसको सस्टेन नहीं कर पाएगा, तो वो काम करना छोड़ देंगे। जो कि मैंने बहुत सारे रूरल एरियाज में, जैसे भागलपुर में वीविंग क्लस्टर्स के साथ देखा, और राजस्थान में वेस्टर्न राजस्थान के एप्ली के एम्ब्रॉयडरी क्लस्टर्स में देखा कि बहुत सारे यंगस्टर्स वो नहीं जुड़ना चाहते हैं, क्योंकि उन्हें लगता है कि जितनी हम मेहनत करते हैं, हमें उसका रेन्यूमरेशन नहीं मिलता है, तो फिर क्यों हम जुड़े, हमारा फ्यूचर क्या है इसमें। सो आई थिंक दिस सेशन इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट सेशन, कि किस तरह से अगर हम इसे एज अ एंटरप्राइज, पूरा क्राफ्ट सेक्टर को एज अ सक्सेसफुल बिजनेस एंटरप्राइज लेकर के बनाना चाहेंगे, तभी ये हम आगे सस्टेन कर पाएंगे। और जितनी सारी चीजें हैं कि उसको सस्टेनेबल बनाना है, और वो तो वैसे भी हमारे अगर ट्रेडिशनल कल्चर और क्राफ्ट को देखें तो वो होता ही है। ट्रेडिशनल उनका कॉन्सेप्ट ही था कि लोकल चीजों को लेकर के उसी से बनाते थे। बट अब चूंकि सवाल लार्जर हो गया, बिकॉज वी आर सो कनेक्टेड, कि लोकल मार्केट में उन्हें इतना नहीं मिल पाता है, तो उन्हें लार्जर मार्केट से कनेक्ट होना है। तो नाउ द प्लेइंग फील्ड हैज इंक्रीज्ड। सो इसके लिए it is very important that as designers we come together with craftspeople, and not only as designers and craftspeople, but we also need business minds in this. We also need people with marketing expertise to all come together, and that is when we can see a successful enterprise emerging out of craft sector.
थैंक यू सारिका। आपने जो बोला है उससे रिलेटेड कई सारे सवाल मेरे दिमाग में आ रहे हैं, बट एक बार हम अपना इंट्रोडक्शन ख़त्म करके और फिर दोबारा आपके पास आएंगे और फिर से सवाल पूछेंगे। क्या मैं शारिक से रिक्वेस्ट कर सकती हूँ कि आप थोड़ा सा अपने काम के बारे में बताइए। आप बहुत समय से उन एरियाज़ में काम कर रहे हैं जहाँ पर कॉन्फ्लिक्ट है, और आप इस एरिया में ऑलरेडी एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप एंड मैनेजमेंट के एरिया में ऑलरेडी कई इंस्टीट्यूशन बिल्डिंग कर चुके हैं और बहुत लंबे समय से काम कर रहे हैं। आपका क्या एक्सपीरियंस रहा है?
थैंक यू स्वागता। मुझे ऐसा लग रहा है जैसे मैं किसी इंटरव्यू में अपीयर हो रहा हूँ, तो हाँ, थोड़ा सा सबके लिए मैं थोड़ा सा मतलब संक्षेप में बताना चाहता हूँ, बहुत डिटेल में नहीं। मुझे अच्छा लगेगा कि अगर हम थोड़ा सवाल जवाब रखें और पार्टिसिपेट करें, तो हमने जैसा सोचा था कि अगर इस डिस्कशन में आर्टिशियंस भी हैं तो उनको समझ में आना चाहिए कि किस मुद्दे की बात कर रहे हैं। तो मेरे बारे में सिर्फ इतना ही बताना चाहता हूँ कि मैं शुरू से एक टीचर रहा हूँ और अभी अंबेडकर यूनिवर्सिटी दिल्ली में अध्यापक हूँ, जहाँ पर मैं बिजनेस स्कूल से रिलेटेड हूँ। वैसे मेरी ट्रेनिंग एनआईडी से है और एज अ डिजाइनर है, लेकिन अभी मैं बिजनेस और एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप के साथ काम करता हूँ और इस मकसद से काम करते हैं कि जो यंग लोग हैं उनके पास कुछ अगर विचार हैं, आइडियाज हैं, अपना बिजनेस शुरू करना चाहते हैं, तो वो किस ढंग से उसको अपने आइडिया को आगे ले जा सकता है। इससे पहले मैं कश्मीर में 10 साल एक इंस्टीट्यूट जो क्राफ्ट डेवलपमेंट इंस्टीट्यूट के नाम से जाना जाता है, श्रीनगर में काम करता था, और उससे पहले मैं नेशनल इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ फैशन टेक्नोलॉजी के साथ काम करता था। तो अभी मेरी जो स्थिति है वो ये है कि तकरीबन 7 साल हो गए हैं कि मेन स्ट्रीम क्राफ्ट के साथ कोई एक डायरेक्ट लिंक नहीं है मेरा। वो अच्छा भी है और बुरा भी है। अच्छा इस हिसाब से है कि मैं एक थोड़ा ऊपर उठ के देख सकता हूँ कि जो मैंने काम किया और दूसरे लोग काम कर रहे हैं, तो थोड़ा ऊपर का एक नज़रिया दे सकता हूँ कि भई ये ठीक था, नहीं ठीक था, मैंने क्या गलतियाँ करी, क्या चीज़ मुझे ज़्यादा करनी चाहिए थी जो नहीं करी, एक्सेट्रा, एक्सेट्रा। और बुरी बात ये है, थोड़ा कमी ये है कि अभी जो करंट इन्फॉर्मेशन है वो उतनी ज़्यादा मेरे पास नहीं है। तो मैंने क्राफ्ट के अंदर बहुत शुरू से काम किया था और मुझे लगता है कि ये बताना थोड़ा ज़रूरी है, थोड़ा क्रेडिट की बात भी है कि जो मैं क्राफ्ट में आया वो एनआईडी की एक बहुत अच्छी टीचर थी, जो जिनका देहांत हो गया है अभी, नीलम अय्यर। उन्होंने मुझे इनकरेज किया था और वो इंडियन इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ मैनेजमेंट अहमदाबाद और एनआईडी का एक बहुत अच्छा एक इंटरेस्टिंग प्रोजेक्ट था रूरल यूनिवर्सिटी के नाम से, जवाजा के अंदर, और बहुत अच्छा एक्सपेरिमेंट था कि इस एरिया में और इस एरियाज में जो खासतौर से अनऑर्गेनाइज्ड एरिया है उसमें काम करना है तो कैसे करना है। तो वहाँ से मेरी शुरुआत हुई थी, लेकिन समहाउ फेट मुझे ले गया थोड़ा अलग डायरेक्शन में फैशन के साथ, और उसके बाद फिर से मैं क्राफ्ट में काम कर रहा था 10 साल, और 14 से 17 तक अभी अंबेडकर यूनिवर्सिटी के अंदर एक अलग ढंग का डिजाइन प्रोग्राम है जो सोशल डिजाइन प्रोग्राम है, उसके साथ में जुड़ा हुआ हूँ। तो मेरी जो लर्निंग है वो थोड़ी सी बताना चाहता हूँ ताकि थोड़ा एक प्रोवोकेशन आ जाए कि उससे मिले जुले कुछ सवाल या विचार के ऊपर हम बात कर सकें। तो पहली चीज तो ये है कि मुझे जैसे ही क्राफ्ट में गया मुझे लगा कि झटका लगे कई सारे, और उसमें सबसे पहली बात ये थी कि हम अपने जो काम करने की स्थिति है और काम करने की जगह है और जो हमारे जीवन की जगह है उसको अलग नहीं कर सकते हैं, उनको जोड़ के रखना पड़ेगा। तो जैसे कि अगर एक इंडस्ट्री में जाके काम करते हैं या कॉर्पोरेट के साथ काम करते हैं या इंस्टीट्यूशन में काम करते हैं, तो ये होता है कि भाई 9 बजे से 5 बजे तक हम टाइम देंगे अपने ऑफिस में और काम की बात करेंगे। उसके बाद हमारा घर का काम है जिसमें हम घर की चीज़ों के ऊपर फोकस करेंगे, अपने अलग प्रॉब्लम्स हैं उनको देखेंगे और वो सब के ऊपर ध्यान देंगे। लेकिन क्राफ्ट में और आर्टिशंस के साथ पहली बात मुझे लगी ज़रूरी जो समझने वाली है कि हम इन दोनों चीज़ों को अलग नहीं कर सकते। और हमको, क्योंकि क्राफ्ट्समैन उस ढंग से नहीं देखते हैं और हम भी उस ढंग से नहीं देख सकते हैं, क्योंकि कभी भी कोई ज़रूरत होती है, तो उसको एड्रेस करना है। घर में कोई अगर परिवार में बीमार पड़ा, उसकी मदद करनी है, बच्चों की पढ़ाई का मसला है, उसको एड्रेस करना है। ट्रांसपोर्ट की व्यवस्था नहीं है अलग-अलग गाँव में, क्योंकि जो जीवन है वो एक ढंग से इतना घना जुड़ा हुआ है कि क्राफ्ट्समैन कभी भी उस चीज़ को अलग करके नहीं देख सकता है। और ये नहीं देख सकता है कि भाई मेरा काम का जो आउटपुट है वो सिर्फ़ काम के बारे में है। उसको दूसरी चीज़ों को देखना पड़ेगा और हमको वही अप्रोच लेनी पड़ेगी कि इसको हम एक होलिस्टिक इंटीग्रेटेड ढंग से देखें। हमारा इससे मेरा एक जो अदर एक टिप्पणी है इस बात के ऊपर वो ये है कि हमारे जो भी संस्थान हैं और हमारे जो भी प्रोग्राम्स हैं जहाँ पे हम इस तरह के लोगों को ट्रेनिंग दे रहे हैं जो क्राफ्ट के साथ काम कर सकें, वो थोड़ा सा आइसोलेटेड हैं कि डिजाइन का अलग हो रहा है, मैनेजमेंट का अलग हो रहा है, और जो बार बार हम बात कर रहे हैं वो ये बात कर रहे हैं कि भाई सबको मिलके काम करना है। मुझे लगता है कि ऐसे एक संस्थान की भी आवश्यकता है जहाँ पे कुछ इंटीग्रेटेड एक अप्रोच के साथ ट्रेनिंग दी जाए कि भाई क्राफ्ट में डेवलपमेंट के लिए कैसे काम करना है, इसमें डिजाइन भाग हो, तो एक ऐसी एंटिटी हो या एक ऐसी एक्सपर्टीज हो जो कई चीजों को जनरली एड्रेस कर सके। तो उससे मिला मेरा एक ये सीख है क्राफ्ट्स के साथ काम करने पे कि जो भी हमारी स्पेशली हमारे देश के अंदर जिस ढंग से क्राफ्ट को देखा गया है और बढ़ावा दिया गया है गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से, वो दो चीज़ों पे फोकस रहा है। एक तो मार्केटिंग के ऊपर फोकस रहा है कि जो भी स्कीम्स हैं, डेवलपमेंट हैंडीक्राफ्ट्स, डेवलपमेंट कमिश्नर हैंडीक्राफ्ट्स की, मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ टेक्सटाइल्स की, वो सारी मार्केटिंग के ऊपर एक तो फोकस है या स्किल डेवलपमेंट पे फोकस है। और जो बीच का एक हिस्सा है, क्योंकि अगर आप दूसरे एरियाज को देखें, एग्रीकल्चर को देखें, डेयरी फार्मिंग को देखें, कपड़े की इंडस्ट्री को देखें, और दूसरी इंडस्ट्रीज जिसके अंदर एक रिवोल्यूशन आया है, तो उसमें देखने से ये लगेगा कि उसके अंदर एक बीच में भी एक एंटिटी है जो इंटेलेक्चुअली R&D का काम करती है। और क्राफ्ट के अंदर मुझे लगता है कि R&D की कोई एक सपोर्ट सिस्टम हमारे देश में नहीं रहा है, तो एजुकेशन में लाने की बहुत ज़रूरत है और इंटीग्रेटेड एक ढंग से इसको देखने की ज़रूरत है, जहाँ पे डेवलपमेंट को साथ में लेते हुए एक इंटेलेक्चुअल कैपिटल बनाया जाए क्राफ्ट्स के लिए जो R&D को देखे। और क्योंकि जो भी हम इंगेज होते हैं, अभी हमारे पास एक प्रेशर रहता है डिजाइनर्स के पास कि भाई फाइनली, जैसे मुझे लगता है कि आपकी स्कीम में भी उस्ताद के एक प्रेशर और एक एक्सपेक्टेशन ये रही है कि फाइनली प्रोडक्ट निकल के आना चाहिए कोई। ये मुझे लगता है जरूरी नहीं है, और यहाँ पर एक अपॉर्चुनिटी थी और हो सकती है कि हम इसको दूसरे ढंग से देखें, जो हमारा आउटपुट है वो प्रोडक्ट का ना हो, कुछ और का हो। कि स्कीम क्या हो सकती है, ट्रेनिंग के साधन क्या हो सकते हैं, अगर उस्ताद की बात कर रहे हैं तो उस्ताद की रिक्वायरमेंट क्या है, और उसको अगर मॉडल को उस्ताद वाले को सेल्फ सस्टेनेबल बनाना है, जो अपने आप किसी गांव में या किसी लोकेशन में या किसी शहर में चलता रहे, तो उसके लिए क्या क्या चीज़ की ज़रूरत है। तो पहली चीज ये कि हमको अपना दृष्टिकोण को बड़ा करना पड़ेगा, और उसमें दूसरी चीजों को, जैसे दूसरे लोगों ने, सोनम ने भी बोला, और जो पिछला आई थिंक डिस्कशन हो रहा था उसके अंदर भी ये बात आई थी, दूसरा मेन स्ट्रीम एजुकेशन के अंदर इसमें R&D का काम हो, और तीसरी चीज इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को डेवलप किया जाए जो डिजाइन के बाहर हो, कि क्वालिटी के लिए आप क्या इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलप कर रहे हैं, सप्लाई चेन के लिए आप क्या इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलप कर रहे हैं, क्राफ्ट्समैन के वर्किंग सिचुएशंस को देखते हुए क्या चीज़ बेहतर की जा रही है, क्रेडिट की फैसिलिटी है नहीं है। जैसे कश्मीर के अंदर हमारा एक बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग एक्सपीरियंस था कि क्राफ्ट मैन को एक स्कीम आई थी कि बिना कोई कोलेटरल, बिना किसी गारंटी के बैंक 30,000 रुपए तक का एक क्रेडिट दे सकता है, और उसके लिए क्रेडिट कार्ड की बहुत बात हुई थी, बड़े बड़े लोगों ने आके उसको इनॉग्रेट किया था। लेकिन फाइनली ग्राउंड पे कई साल मेहनत करने के बाद भी ये पता चला कि पैसा कभी भी क्राफ्ट्समैन को नहीं मिलता था, क्योंकि जो उसके इम्प्लीमेंटेशन एजेंसी थी वो बैंक थी, और बैंक वाले कभी भी भरोसा नहीं करते थे क्राफ्ट्समैन के ऊपर कि भाई इसको वो पैसा दे सकते हैं, तो कोई पैसा देता नहीं था, उनको घुमाते रहते थे। तो ये सब चीजें जो है, आई थिंक एक तो ये हो रहा है कि विजन और प्लानिंग में कुछ कुछ होता है, स्कीम बनती है, लेकिन वो इम्प्लीमेंट कभी भी नहीं हो पाती है हमारे देश में। तो वो क्यों नहीं हो पाती है, उसको कैसे करना है। दूसरी चीज, जैसे मैंने बोला, एजुकेशन की तरफ देखना, और क्राफ्ट्समैन को भी इसके अंदर लाना कि भाई एजुकेशन के अंदर से, एजुकेशन से क्या फायदा हो सकता है, ना कि सिर्फ स्किल की एजुकेशन, बट दूसरी चीजों की एजुकेशन, एजुकेशन फॉर एजुकेशन से। और तीसरी चीज, ये जो वाइड एक डायमेंशन है उसको वाइड देखकर और उसमें सब चीजों को इंक्लूड किया जाए। तो ये तीन चीज मेरी लर्निंग रही है, और मुझे लगता है कि इसके अंदर बहुत पोटेंशियल है और बहुत आवश्यकता है अभी कि इस चीज के ऊपर आगे काम किया जाए और इसको इम्पोर्टेंस दी जाए। थैंक यू।
थैंक यू शारिक, बहुत सही पॉइंट्स आपने शेयर किए हैं। इनमें से कई सारी चीज़ें हैं जिनके बारे में ज़्यादा बात करेंगे। With this, I will invite Sonam to give an introduction of yourself and the kind of work that you've been doing in the region of Sikkim, and the way you've engaged in so many sectors, what has been your experience with working with so many sectors? Do you see, what role do you see that of the state coming into picture when you're working with so many sectors, is in terms of the way implementation of schemes happen, or in terms of how funding works and things like that? So with this, do you have something that you want to present? Would you share that?
Thank you, Swagata. Good evening to everyone. My name is Sonam Tashi. I'm a industrial designer trained at NID. तो पहले तो थोड़ा आप सबसे समझ चाहता हूँ कि मेरा हिंदी इतना अच्छा नहीं है, तो थोड़ा मैं I'll give a effort थोड़ा हिंदी में बात करने के लिए, क्योंकि I understand आपका जो ऑडियंस है बैठे हैं सब जगह, ज़्यादातर आर्टिजन्स है, तो उनके बेनिफिट के लिए थोड़ा हिंदी में मैं प्रेजेंटेशन करना चाहता हूँ. This is probably my first time I'm doing this. So मेरा नाम सोनम ताशी है, तो मैं प्रोडक्ट डिज़ाइनर हूँ, मैं NID से पास आउट हुआ हूँ. तो ये 2008 में हम लोग सिक्किम वापस आए, तो यहाँ पे हम दोस्त जो NID से थे, एक मल्टी डिस्प्ले डिज़ाइन स्टूडियो एक्सट्रीम करके शुरू किए हम लोग. फिर उसके बाद हम लोग 10-8-9 साल ऐसे ही कंसल्टेंसी 20 सेक्टर के ऐसे अलग अलग चीज़ों में हम लोग काम करना चालू कर दिया, फ्रॉम कम्युनिकेशन डिज़ाइन एज वेल एज इंडस्ट्रियल डिज़ाइन. फिर एक टाइम ऐसा आया कि हम लोग को थोड़ा वो रियलाइजेशन हुआ कि खाली कंसल्टेंसी करने से कुछ होता नहीं है, क्योंकि हम लोग लाइवलीहुड स्किलिंग ये वो काफ़ी सारा चीज़ हुआ है कि लेकिन ग्राउंड में वो इम्प्लीमेंट ही नहीं हो रहा था. तो कहीं ना कहीं एक गैप, मेजर गैप हम लोग को फिगर आउट हुआ कि ये होता नहीं है. या तो अगर आप को इतना लगता है कि ये जो डिज़ाइन सॉल्यूशंस है और जो भी हम लोग कर रहे थे कंसल्टेंसी के हिसाब से, अगर वो इतना अच्छा है तो व्हाई डोंट यू इन्वेस्ट इन इट. तो तब हम लोगों ने वी स्टार्टेड वेयरिंग द एंटरप्रेन्योर्स कैप. तो जब हम एंटरप्रेन्योर्स के कैप वी स्टार्ट वेयरिंग इन 2017, आई स्टार्टेड ला एक प्रोडक्ट ब्रांड करके हमने शुरू किया कि, और एक माउंटेन प्रोडक्ट ब्रांड हम लोगों ने शुरू किया कि फोकस किया कि सारे 10 इंडियन हिमालयन स्टेट्स और 2 यूनियन टेरिटरीज को फोकस करके, क्योंकि हमको ऐसे लगा कि एट द एंड ऑफ द डे कहीं ना कहीं हम लोग की समस्या जो है, अभी सुबह से मैं सुन रहा था कि काफ़ी सारे जो एग्जाम्पल्स थे ये इंडियन हिमालयन रीजन से ही आ रहे थे. माइनॉरिटी वाला जो भी केस स्टडीज आ रहे थे, तो उस्ताद वाला जो भी केस स्टडीज आ रहे थे सारे, तो कहीं ना कहीं पे देयर इज अ रिलेटिबिलिटी, कहीं कि वो प्रॉब्लम मैं भी महसूस करता हूँ, मुझे भी समझ में आ रहा है कि अच्छा ये क्यों हो रहा है ऐसे. तो उस हिसाब से हम लोगों ने एक वी गॉट इनटू एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप. तो पहले तो हम लोग पहले साल तो हम लोग जब हम शुरू किए थे तो काफ़ी सारा काम हो चुका था कंसल्टेंसी के हिसाब से. वो जो भी मैपिंग करना था, कम्युनिटीज़ के साथ जो एंगेज होना था, जो एक ट्रेनिंग मॉड्यूल्स है, सारा चीज़ करा. तो थ्रू कंसल्टेंसी हम लोगों ने काफ़ी सारा चीज़ सेटअप कर दिया था सिक्किम में. और सिक्किम छोटा सा स्टेट है, तो इतना डिफिकल्टी भी नहीं है. तो जब हम 2017 में हम लोगों ने चालू किया, तो हम लोग एक आइडिया ऐसे आया कि चलो हम एक मॉडल बनाते हैं कि जो क्रिएटिव इंडस्ट्रीज को प्रमोट करें, है ना, और जो बाकी जो सेक्टर्स है उनके साथ जुड़े, कि ऐसा ना हो कि खाली हैंडीक्राफ्ट अलग से है. और जैसे रेबेका ने भी पिछली बार जो बात किया, तो डिफरेंस विद हैंडमेड एंड हैंडीक्राफ्ट वो चीज़, क्योंकि जब आप हैंडमेड देखोगे तो काफ़ी सारा चीज़ है, साबुन भी आ जाता है, रोटी भी आ जाता है, कुछ भी आ जाता है उसमें. तो कहीं ना कहीं हम लोगों को लग रहा था कि अच्छा चलो एक इंडस्ट्रीज को सेटअप करते हैं कहाँ पे मेजर क्रिएटिव इनपुट्स हो, और जो बाकी दूसरे सेक्टर्स है जैसे कि टूरिज्म है, एग्रीकल्चर है, हॉर्टिकल्चर है, ये सारी चीज़ों से जुड़ जाए कहीं ना कहीं. तो मेरा जो अभी एक छोटा सा प्रेजेंटेशन है, एग्जाम्पल्स के हिसाब से आपको एक्सप्लेन करना चाहता हूँ. सो आई जस्ट शेयर माय स्क्रीन. सो हमें एक क्या सीख मिला कि 8-9 साल से, कि हम लोग NID में जब पढ़ रहे थे तो एक फॉर्म फॉलोज फंक्शन वाला एक प्रोडक्ट डिजाइन में एक आइडियोलॉजी और एक डायरेक्शन के हिसाब से हम लोग चलते थे. लेकिन हमारे जो 8 साल का जो पोर्टफोलियो था, और अभी 11 साल हो गया हम लोग का, तो हमारा रियलाइजेशन ये हुआ कि कहीं ना कहीं हमारा जो भी काम हो रहा था कोई ना कोई कंसर्न के हिसाब से आ रहा था, कहीं कहीं क्लाइमेट चेंज या तो वेस्ट जनरेटेड और लाइवलीहुड का इश्यूज हो, कुछ भी हो, तो एक कंसर्न के हिसाब से आ रहा था। तो हमारे पहाड़ी इलाके में ना ये बहुत बायोडाइवर्सिटी बहुत फ्रेजाइल है हमारे यहाँ पे। तो इस हिसाब से हम लोग को वी हैव टू चूज कि यहाँ पे इंडस्ट्रीज लगाना है तो कैसे वाला इंडस्ट्रीज लगना चाहिए, अगर डेवलपमेंट होना चाहिए तो किस हिसाब से होना चाहिए। तो एक हम लोग को जो भी अप्रोच लेना था वो एक होलिस्टिक अप्रोच लेना था। तो वी स्टार्टेड अ फॉर्म फॉलोज कंसर्न थिंग। तो एक कंसर्न था कि माउंटेन लाइवलीहुड्स, अभी पहाड़ों में इतना सारा स्कीम्स आ रहा था, नरेगा, एमजी नरेगा, ऑर्गेनिक सिक्किम से, ऑर्गेनिक मिशन से कुछ ना कुछ आ रहा है, कहीं ना कहीं बहुत सारे लाइवलीहुड वाला वो चीज आ रहा था। ट्रेनिंग के ऊपर ट्रेनिंग, ट्रेनिंग के ऊपर ट्रेनिंग, ज्यादातर लोगों का स्टाइपेंड लाइवलीहुड तो स्टाइपेंड से ही आ रहा था। जब आप एग्रीगेट करते थे कि एक एक बंदे का पूरा साल का इनकम किससे आ रहा है, वो स्टाइपेंड से आ रहा था, ट्रेनिंग से आ रहा था। तो कहीं ना कहीं ऐसे लग रहा था कि ये कहीं नहीं जा रहा है ये चीज, तो वी स्टार्टेड देन स्टार्ट डेवलपिंग प्रोडक्ट्स जहाँ पे इतना सारा स्किल, हाई स्किल ना हो। हम लोगों ने कैटेगरीज बनाया, हम लोग बैम्बू से चालू किया, तो वहां से हम लोगों ने एक कैटेगरीज बनाई कि कौन सा लेवल का स्किल्स कहाँ पे अप्लाई करना चाहिए, तो वी स्टार्टेड देन लुकिंग एट प्रोडक्ट्स वेयर देयर इज नॉट मच टूलिंग रिक्वायर्ड, और जहाँ पे इतना सारा हाई स्किल्स ना रिक्वायर हो। तो हम लोगों ने ऐसे प्रोडक्ट्स वोडक्ट्स बनाना चालू किया जहाँ बहुत सिंपल सिंपल प्रोडक्ट्स हो, जो कि आसानी से बना सके, स्केल में बना सके। क्योंकि एक एक जो हमारा एज एन एंटरप्रेन्योर हम लोग का ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा एक एक प्रॉब्लम जो होता है कि जो इन्वेस्टमेंट करते हैं उस और जो आउटपुट होता है वो मैच नहीं करता। एंड मोस्टली ये क्यों नहीं होता, क्योंकि उस ज़्यादा सारा ये बिजनेस मॉडल स्केल में नहीं होता है, क्योंकि जैसे शारिक ने बताया कि एक कॉम्प्लेक्स सिस्टम है, एक एक गांव गांव के साथ काम करना, कम्युनिटी के साथ काम करना, वहां पे हम लोग फैक्ट्री मोड में नहीं जा सकते, क्योंकि एक एक ऑलरेडी एग्जिस्टिंग सोशल सिस्टम है, उसको डिस्टर्ब नहीं कर सकते हम, क्योंकि वो बिकॉज दैट वो सोशल सिस्टम जो एग्जिस्टिंग है वो इतना सच अ ब्यूटीफुल सिस्टम कि उससे वो जो उनके सोशल लाइफ है, सोशल सिस्टम, कल्चरल सिस्टम्स है, बहुत सस्टेनेबल है, वो जनरेशन से कंटिन्यू हो रहा है और बहुत ब्यूटीफुली कंटिन्यू हो रहा है, तो उसको डिस्टर्ब नहीं करना है। तो उस हिसाब से देन वी स्टार्टेड लुकिंग एट प्रोडक्ट्स जो कि आसान से आप बना सकेगा। तो ये प्रोडक्ट्स हम लोग बनाना चालू किया। फिर उसके बाद एक मेजर कंसर्न आया कि पहाड़ी इलाकों में सब जगह टूरिज्म है, और जहाँ पे सुंदर सुंदर पहाड़ हैं वहाँ पे आपका ऐसा वाला पहाड़ भी मिलेगा आपको, जहाँ पे पैकेजिंग वैकेजिंग सारा पड़ा हुआ है ये सिंगल यूज प्लास्टिक्स के साथ। और सिक्किम हैज बीन लीडिंग इन टर्म्स ऑफ पॉलिसीज विद वेस्ट। सो इसमें क्या होता है कि काफी सारे विलेजेस और कम्युनिटीज देमसेल्व्स केम फॉरवर्ड, जैसे कि लाचेन है, युक्सम है, लाचुंग है, तो ये सारे विलेजेस आगे आके उन लोगों ने खुद ब खुद बैन कर दिया ये सारा चीज। तो हम लोगों को कहीं ना कहीं लगा कि ये अच्छा एक अपॉर्चुनिटी है कि कहीं ना कहीं हम लोग को ये जो क्राफ्ट का जो स्किल सेट्स है उसको इस चीज से इंटीग्रेट कैसे करें। तो हम लोगों ने वी इंट्रोड्यूस बैम्बू एज अ पैकेजिंग मटेरियल। तो ये एक टेमी टी है, बहुत मशहूर टी है सिक्किम से, और बहुत हाई वैल्यू टी है। तो ज्यादातर टूरिस्ट जब आते तो काफी सारा चाय पत्ती यहाँ से लेके वापस जाते हैं। तो उसके लिए हम लोगों ने वी स्टार्टेड हमारा ओन ब्रांड कॉल टी। तो उसी में हम लोगों ने इंटीग्रेट कर दिया कि टी इंडस्ट्री को हैंडीक्राफ्ट सेक्टर से, बैम्बू सेक्टर से। फिर उसके बाद अभी जो भी ट्रैकिंग रूट है, तो वहाँ पे कंचनजंगा नेशनल पार्क है जो कि यूनेस्को वर्ल्ड हेरिटेज साइट है। तो वहाँ पे जब एक वेस्ट ऑडिट हुआ, कंचनजंगा कंजर्वेशन सोसाइटी और WWF इंडिया ने जब एक ऑडिट किया, उनको पता लगा कि काफी सारा सिंगल वेस्ट डिस्पोजेबल अनडिस्पोजेबल चीजें, प्लास्टिक्स मिला उनको। तो उसी हिसाब से हम लोगों ने अभी एक ये ब्रेकफास्ट सेट, हम लोगों ने एक ट्रैकिंग सेट हम लोगों ने डेवलप किया है, जो भी अभी एक वहाँ पे गांव में दे आर टेकिंग स्टेप्स ऑन ऑल सो दैट दे कैन इंट्रोड्यूस दिस, कि जो भी ऊपर जाए ट्रैकिंग वेकिंग दे टेक दिस थिंग विद देम, and we are basically selling this at a very low costing. So कि जो कि इससे जो छोटा सा percentage इसका जो profit it goes into the conservation part of it. The cleanup they have the WWF उनका एक initiative है with IMI Integrated Mountain Initiative. It's called the Himalayan Cleanup. तो ये सारे states में एक हर साल एक audit होता है जहाँ पे वो लोग ये सारी चीजों को collect करते हैं. So we are basically tying up with them. So एक छोटा सा percentage of this budget will go into the contribute into the Himalayan cleanup initiative. So और दूसरा चीज हम लोगों ने पता किया कि लाचेन और लाचेन हम Sikkim is more or less a Buddhist state. Himalayan region में काफी सारे Buddhist areas है, and then we found out that we are one of the biggest polluters because हमारे यहाँ पे जो prayer flags और ये what do you call scarves है वो सारा synthetic polyester scarves है और हमारे बहुत सारे कंज्यूम होते हैं यहाँ पे रिलीजियस फंक्शंस के और सारे हमारे सारे लैंडस्केप ही सेक्रेट है तो कहीं ना कहीं आपको नेचुरल एनवायरनमेंट में ये सिंथेटिक नॉन बायोडिग्रेडेबल टेक्सटाइल मटेरियल मिलेंगे आपको. तो हम लोगों ने वहाँ के जो कम्युनिटी है लाचेन के कम्युनिटी है उनके साथ कोलैबोरेट करके इस 1st of January हम लोगों ने खदा करके एक कॉटन सिल्क प्रिंटेड खदा वी लॉन्च्ड which is now the entire community is now replacing it. तो अभी ये महीने और नेक्स्ट महीने में वो लोग अनाउंसमेंट भी हो जाएगा कि we are trying to make sure that Lachen becomes the first village to actually completely ban synthetic prayer flags and synthetic Buddhist materials out there. So this is how basically it looks. So the Rinpoche or the Lachen Rinpoche was very kind enough along with the two Pipins. He's the one on the left. They are the village headmen. तो उन लोगों ने पूरा गांव के सामने वो मॉनेस्ट्री में लेके पूरा लॉन्च कर दिया और बोले कि ये दिस इज अ वेरी गुड इनिशिएटिव. ऑलरेडी वी हैव सोल्ड ऑफ व्हाटएवर स्टॉक वी हैड. थोड़ा सा पड़ा हुआ है लेकिन वी ऑलरेडी नाउ इनटू द सेकंड लेवल ऑफ प्रिंटिंग. Then we basically looked at things like the last mile connectivity. ये पहाड़ों में ये सारा प्रॉब्लम है. सारे जगह इट्स नॉट कनेक्टेड थ्रू रोड, एक्सेस नहीं है. तो ये फ्राइट बेस्ड इश्यूज काफी सारा चीज प्रॉब्लम होता है बिकॉज ऑफ द कैरेज चार्जेस सो हाई कि जो अबव द रोड है और बिलो द रोड है उनका जो कॉस्ट ऑफ लिविंग इज वेरी हायर कंपेयर टू द वन ऑन जिनका घर रास्ते से कनेक्टेड है. तो हम लोगों ने सारा स्टडी किया कि प्रॉब्लम्स क्या है अर्बन एरिया में, रूरल एरियाज में. देन वी बेसिकली गॉट अ बैम्बू आर्टिजन्स टू मेक दिस मोबिलिटी डिवाइस कॉल्ड टोक टोक जो कि कोलैप्सिबल है और 40 किलो का वेट ले सकता है और यू कैन लाइक ड्रैग इट अप एंड डाउन द एनी काइंड ऑफ स्टेयर्स. सो ये चीज अभी हम लोगों ने म्युनिसिपैलिटी के साथ हम लोग वी आर ट्राइंग टू कोलैबोरेट एंड इंट्रोड्यूस दिस थिंग विद द GMC वर्कर्स जो कि वेस्ट कलेक्ट करते हैं. सो एक चीज जैसे शारक ने भी बताया था पहले कि कहीं ना कहीं क्राफ्ट का जो वो चीज़ है वो एजुकेशन में दूसरे फॉर्म में भी होना चाहिए. तो हम लोगों ने अभी रिसेंटली वी रीडिजाइन द टेक्स्ट बुक्स फॉर गवर्नमेंट प्राइमरी स्कूल्स. तो उसमें एक काफ़ी सारे चीज़ें जैसे कि मैथ्स का एक चैप्टर है. तो इसमें हम लोग मैथ्स का जो मल्टीप्लिकेशन का जो कॉन्सेप्ट है वो वीविंग के हिसाब से सिखा रहे हैं. तो मैथ्स में अभी एक अप्रोच ये एन EVS अप्रोच डाला है जहाँ के वो फॉर्मूला है खाली ना सिखाए खाली एक, लेकिन वो जो फॉर्मूला है उसको नैरेटिव के हिसाब से कैसे आप समझा सकते हैं और कॉन्टेक्स्ट के हिसाब से जैसे कि उनके इमीडिएट एनवायरनमेंट में कैसे ये चीज दिखते रहते हैं गाँव में कि पीपल आर वीविंग विद बैम्बू एंड ऑल. सो दे बेसिकली लर्न फ्रॉम क्राफ्ट्स बेसिकली द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ मल्टीप्लिकेशन. Then things like we have always talked about कि काफी सारे जो handicraft and handloom है वो सारे processes are not documented. The Handmade in India book is probably one of the only books around which actually looks at the documentation of almost the whole of India. And also NID also has been having a huge repository of craft documentation. तो अभी ये सारे चीज अभी हम लोगों ने सिक्किम का एटलीस्ट जो है वो सारा स्कूल टेक्स्ट बुक्स में हम लोगों ने इंट्रोड्यूस करा दिया ये सारा चीज. So this is basically how a Thangka painter is basically making a Thangka, the process. And then also the thing of commerce, ना. जैसे कि हम लोग गांव में ही, मतलब किताबों में ही we are trying to explain how commerce related to crafts works through the concept of profit and loss. एक chapter है maths में, तो उसमें एक मेला में क्या क्या कितने में मिलता है, क्या क्या चीजें मिलते हैं वो, और उसका रेट्स क्या है, कितना, हाउ मच वाज सोल्ड, हाउ मच वाज द प्रॉफिट, ये सारा चीज हम लोगों ने अभी स्कूल एजुकेशन करिकुलम में इंट्रोड्यूस कर दिया है. जैसे कि ये एक दूसरा चीज है फेंसिंग, हाउ इज बैम्बू यूज्ड इन विलेजेस फॉर फेंसिंग, फॉर कैरिंग वाटर, एंड दिस इज अ स्टोरी ऑफ हाउ like different generations, no, the knowledge being passed on from one generation to another one. Yeah. Then traditional like homes and how were it made. हमारे सिक्किम में, और आई थिंक इट्स देयर इन अदर स्टेट्स आल्सो, काफी सारे पुराने घर वो कील के बिना होता है, all load bearing होता है. There's no nails involved in constructing the house. It's all load bearing. So ये सारा traditional knowledge जो है वो we basically introduce it into the classrooms. Now, why am I showing you all these things is, and how is it related to entrepreneurship is that at the end of the day, कहीं न कहीं ये जो कॉम्प्लेक्स सिस्टम है जहाँ पे आपको जब एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप, ज्यादातर आप देखते हो एक फैक्ट्री है, 100 वर्कर्स है, इतना इनपुट इतना आउटपुट है, वो बहुत सिंपल चीजें होते हैं. लेकिन जब आप एक गांव के साथ काम करें, कम्युनिटी के साथ आप काम कर रहे हो, तो कहीं ना कहीं आपको एक लॉन्ग टर्म कमिटमेंट करना ही पड़ेगा. इट शुडंट बी लाइक अभी 1-2 साल देखते हैं क्या होता है, जब तक गवर्नमेंट फंडिंग है तब तक रहते हैं, जब तक गवर्नमेंट फंडिंग खत्म हो जाता है तब निकल लेते हैं. तो ये वाला जो एटीट्यूड है वो एक तो चेंज होना चाहिए. और एक एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप जो आप जाते हो वहां पे, इफ यू कीप डिपेंडिंग ऑन गवर्नमेंट फंडिंग, तो वो एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप रहता नहीं है वो. क्योंकि उसमें कहीं ना कहीं बहुत सारे ऐसे लिमिटेशंस आ ही जाता है कि आप आगे मूव भी नहीं कर पाओगे, और एक्सक्यूजेस के ऊपर एक्सक्यूजेस होता रहेगा. एक अगर आपको लगता है कि ये चीज आप, यू बिलीव इन द मॉडल, यू बिलीव इन योर बिजनेस मॉडल, तो अब आपको एक लॉन्ग टर्म कमिटमेंट, और कहीं ना कहीं आपको बैंक के पास जाके उनको कन्विंस करना ही पड़ेगा आपको. देयर इज नो अदर वे आउट, क्योंकि हम लोग काफी सारे टाइम ऐसे बिता देते हैं, कहीं से ग्रांट आएगा, कहीं से कुछ होगा, डीपीआर के ऊपर डीपीआर ये बनाते रहते हैं, कुछ होता नहीं उससे, है ना. तो अगर एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप में अगर जाना ही है तो ये सारा चीज आपको सोचना ही पड़ेगा कि 10, 12, 100, 200 लोगों को साथ लेके 10 साल, 20 साल, 30 साल आपको उसमें घुसना ही चाहिए. ठीक है. और दूसरा चीज ये है कि कहीं ना कहीं ये सिस्टम में आपका वो गारंटी रहता ही नहीं है, वो इनकम सिक्योर ही नहीं रहता. आज ज्यादातर आजकल मतलब मोस्ट ऑफ टाइम्स व्हाट हैपेंस इज कि जो एजेंसीज है वो आ जाते हैं, वो बोलते हैं कि अच्छा आपसे 10 लूंगा, आपसे 10 लूंगा, आपसे 10 लूंगा, जब बिकेगा, जब पैसा आएगा तब आपको पेमेंट कर दूंगा. तो वो इमीडिएटली हो जाता है, या तो 1 महीना लगता है, 4 महीना लगता है, 1 साल लगता है. आर्टिजन डजंट नो. तो मोस्ट ऑफ टाइम्स जो आर्टिजन्स है, जो क्राफ्ट कम्युनिटी है, दे हैव टू बेसिकली डिपेंड ऑन मल्टीपल सोर्स ऑफ इनकम. उसको 4 जगह देखना होता है कहाँ से इनकम आए. सिंगल सोर्स इनकम है ही नहीं है क्राफ्ट मोस्टली. तो ये चीज हम लोग एट लाव वी इंट्रोड्यूस द बायबैक सिस्टम, कि हम लोग बोले कि उनको अच्छा आप फार्मिंग के सिवाय आप बाकी सारा चीज छोड़ दो, क्योंकि वी डोंट वांट देम टू let go of the farming this, क्योंकि that also becomes a part of the income part of it, because barren lands and everything means bad. It is basically especially in mountainous areas and all, it's a lot of bad news, क्योंकि human wildlife conflict और काफी सारे चीजें problems हैं. तो और एक खुद का जो सस्टेनेबिलिटी, फूड सिक्योरिटी और सारा चीज भी प्रॉब्लम हो जाता है उसमें. तो फार्मिंग को छोड़ के बाकी सारा एक्टिविटीज छोड़ दो आप, और हमारे साथ ये जुड़ के हम भी बेसिकली गिव देम अ गारंटीड इनकम. तो आप लोग, हम लोग पूरा साल में एक आर्टिसन को अगर 10,000 बास्केट्स देते हैं, तो उनको बोलते हैं कि चलो आप इतने महीने में इतने दो, और व्हेन वी गो एंड इंस्पेक्ट एंड से दैट अच्छा यू हैव डन इट एज पर our specifications, we basically pay them on the spot. अब वो सामान बिके ना बिके, it rots in my godown, wherever it is, that's my risk. आर्टिजन्स को उनका अपना जो मेहनत का जो भी हम लोगों ने जो कमिट करके उनको दिया, दे गेट इट ऑन द स्पॉट. तो एक ये सारी चीजों को सिक्योर करना चाहिए. तीसरा चीज जो है कि हम लोग वी कैन नॉट से वी आर द डिजाइन एंड दे आर द कम्युनिटी. स्पेशली यहाँ पे अगर आप लॉन्ग टर्म करना है तो हम लोग को उनके कम्युनिटी के मतलब वी हैव टू बी अ पार्ट ऑफ दैट कम्युनिटी. तो कहीं ना कहीं हम लोग उनके जो उनके शादी है, फ्यूनरल्स है, बहुत सारे मतलब एक्टिविटीज होते हैं गांव में. वी हैव टू बी अ पार्ट ऑफ दैट. वी कैन नॉट जस्ट गो देयर एज अ गेस्ट एंड आउटसाइडर. We have to basically put our hands there, be with them. That is the only way you can then generate social capital. नहीं तो ये सारे चीज या तो आप फैक्ट्री मोड में करो कि फैक्ट्री खोल दो गांव से आर्टिस्ट. दैट्स आल्सो अ गुड थिंग वे ऑफ गोइंग अहेड. देयर इज नथिंग रॉन्ग विद दैट. लेकिन अगर आपको एक पूरा सोशल ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन और एक विलेज का पूरा ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन और प्लेस का वो सारा चाहिए तो यू विल हैव टू हैव अ होलिस्टिक look to the entire thing. So that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sonam. It's absolutely beautiful the way you have integrated different parallel economies together with the design intervention that your team is doing within the region, which makes a lot of sense considering that a craft in isolation, in its silo, not enough. Like you've just said, that the craftsperson has to depend on several other avenues to be able to generate enough to sustain. But the moment you connect it with another, integrate it with another economy, there's a larger chance of it sustaining over a longer period of time because both need it. And the more people join this system, the more stable the entire system becomes. So I think that's a very, very interesting way of going about the way you've been working in that area. There's one question, and this question is something that I've been meaning to ask all three of you, is when we talk about craft and its sustenance, long-term sustenance, we constantly talk about how it is dependent on the governments at all times. It's very, very dependent. So is there any way, I mean, do you think, can you think of suggestions, or do you know of case studies where the dependence can be reduced for that person and in collection, the community? How do you reduce the excessive dependence of an individual on government policies and government itself? Sharik, would you want to comment on this?
हाँ, इसके अंदर आई थिंक आपका जो फंडामेंटल थीम है, दैट इज द आंसर, entrepreneurship. So if I could tell a little story about in 2004 when I went to Kashmir and started working on founding this new institution, क्राफ्ट डेवलपमेंट इंस्टीट्यूट, जो सबसे पहली चीज़ मुझे स्टार्टिंगली दिखी थी, और स्पेशली मुझे लगता है कि कश्मीर में दिखी थी, क्योंकि एज अ मैटर ऑफ पॉलिसीज, डिस्टर्बेंस, जो भी कुछ वहाँ पे हो रहा था, और इतनी इनसिक्योरिटी थी कि लाइवलीहुड इनसिक्योरिटी के मतलब काम चाहे छोटा सा भी मिल जाए एक पियोन का, लेकिन गवर्नमेंट में नौकरी मिल जाए, ताकि अगर कोई बंद होता है, कर्फ्यू लगता है, तो मेरी रोटी रोजी चलती रहे. तो हर एक की यही एक आशा और उम्मीद थी कि किसी तरह मुझे एक परमानेंट काइंड ऑफ लाइवलीहुड का एक सोर्स मिल जाए. और उसके कारण जो उनका एक पर्सपेक्टिव या नज़रिया था गवर्नमेंट की तरफ, वो भी उसी ढंग का हो गया था कि गवर्नमेंट ही सब कुछ कर सकती है. तो सारा का सारा जो सोल्यूशन है वो गवर्नमेंट है, और अगर जब गवर्नमेंट से वो चीज़ आती नहीं है तो उससे उतना ही ज़्यादा डिसअपॉइंटमेंट भी होता है लोगों को, और थोड़ा ऐसा मायूसी हो जाती है कि अब कुछ हो ही नहीं सकता है आगे. तो सबसे पहला जो विचार आया, जो सीख एक निकल कर आई, कि इस माइंडसेट को चेंज करने के लिए यही तरीका है कि हम लोगों को इनकरेज करें कि अपनी प्रॉब्लम्स की जिम्मेदारी अपने ऊपर ले लें, और किसी और के बिना देखे हुए हम खुद को कैसे अपने पैरों पे खड़ा कर सकते हैं. तो आई थिंक द what you are saying कि sustainability and without dependence, the answer is in entrepreneurship, क्योंकि जिस माहौल और जिस कल्चर से हमारा एक देश गुजर रहा है और पीछे की एक हिस्ट्री रही है, उसके अंदर ओनरशिप नहीं है किसी चीज़ के ऊपर। तो अगर हम अपने ऑफिसेस में और अपने जो एक क्या बोलते हैं फॉर्मल वर्किंग क्लास है उसके अंदर देखें तो टॉप लेवल के ऊपर एक बहुत विजन होता है, लोगों को मोटिवेशन होता है कि कुछ करके दिखाना है। लेकिन अगर आप गवर्नमेंट ऑफिसेज में खासतौर से जाएं तो जो टॉप के बाद वाला एक लेवल होता है, जो एक्चुअल एग्जीक्यूटिव्स होते हैं, उनको सिर्फ अपनी सैलरी से मतलब होता है। उनको लगता है कि ऊपर वाले ने बोला है तो किसी तरह से मैं कर दूं। मतलब उनको अपना कोई ओनरशिप नहीं होता। तो ये जो ओनरशिप की प्रॉब्लम है, इसको भी एड्रेस करने के लिए मुझे लगता है कि एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप ही इसको एक ढंग दे सकती है। एजुकेशन में भी मुझे लगता है यही एक तरह का एक अप्रोच है कि टीचर जो बताएगा वो हम पढ़ेंगे। स्टूडेंट अपनी ओनरशिप नहीं लेता अपनी लर्निंग की। अगर हम ज्यादातर इंस्टीट्यूशंस और ज्यादातर टीचिंग लर्निंग को इस देश में देखें तो सब कुछ हम टीचर के हाथ में दे देते हैं। वो उसी तरह का एक सिम्टम है जिसकी आप बात कर रहे हैं कि क्राफ्ट्स के अंदर भी वो एक डिपेंडेंसी है गवर्नमेंट के ऊपर या अलग संस्थान के ऊपर। उसी उसी का मुझे लगता है ये एक्सटेंशन है। और इसका आंसर ये रियली यही है कि लोगों को मिलके ये सोचना कि भाई हम क्या कर सकते हैं और कैसे कर सकते हैं, और हमारा रोल, हमारे जैसे प्रोफेशनल्स हैं या फॉर्मली एजुकेटेड लोग जो हैं, उनका रोल फैसिलिटेशन का होना चाहिए, ना कि हम पहले से अपना एक ब्रीफ बना के जाएं कि ये करना है। उस ब्रीफ को हमें साथ में मिलके आर्टिकुलेट करना पड़ेगा या बनाना पड़ेगा कि भाई जो भी प्रॉब्लम्स और सिम्टोमेटिक हमें प्रॉब्लमेटिक सिचुएशंस दिख रही है उसमें हमारा ब्रीफ क्या निकल कर आता है और कहाँ पे इम्पोर्टेंस है। तो उसको जैसा कि सोनम भी बोल रहे हैं और सारिका ने भी बोला और पिछली बार भी ये बात हो रही थी कि हम ये अपना ब्रीफ लेके नहीं जा सकते कि भाई हम एज ए इंडिविजुअल अब डिजाइनर की तरह आए हैं और हम प्रोडक्ट नया बना लेंगे और उसके बाद हमारा इससे कुछ लेना देना नहीं है। उससे एक बहुत लिमिटेड डेवलपमेंट होगा, उससे एक इंटरेस्टिंग और एक नया तरीके का डेवलपमेंट नहीं हो पाएगा। वो डेवलपमेंट सिर्फ इतना ही होगा कि एक बेसिक इनकम हो सकता है इंश्योर कर ले आप क्राफ्ट्समैन की, लेकिन जो एक्चुअल एम्पावरमेंट होना चाहिए वो एम्पावरमेंट नहीं हो पाएगा। तो मुझे लगता है कि एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप इज वन सिचुएशन, और एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप एक फंडामेंटल स्पिरिट जिसकी ओनरशिप वाली स्पिरिट है कि मैं अपनी प्रॉब्लम अपने आप सॉल्व करना है और कुछ भी करके उसका एक मुझे सॉल्यूशन किसी तरह से निकालना है, और जो भी सामने आता है उसको फेस करके, ना कि उसको हट के मुझे आगे बढ़ना है। और इस डायरेक्शन में जैसा मैंने बताया कि हमने क्राफ्ट डेवलपमेंट इंस्टीट्यूट श्रीनगर में एक इंटरेस्टिंग मैनेजमेंट का प्रोग्राम शुरू किया था जो सबके लिए ओपन था। ऐसा नहीं था कि सिर्फ क्राफ्ट्समैन के लिए है या सिर्फ एजुकेटेड लोगों के लिए है। 2 साल का कोर्स था जिसके अंदर उनको एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप सिखाई जाती थी और इन सब विचारों के साथ एक थोड़ा सा ओरिएंटेशन उनको मिलता था कि भाई दुनिया में क्या हो रहा है, किस किस चीज़ से वो मदद ले सकते हैं, डिज़ाइन का क्या मतलब है, बिजनेस का क्या मतलब है, टेक्नोलॉजी इंटरवेंशन का क्या मतलब है, इसको किस तरह से इस्तेमाल किया जा सकता है, ऑल दिस काइंड ऑफ थिंग। तो मुझे लगता है कि ऐसा एक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलप करना जहाँ पे एंटरप्रेन्योरियल जो स्पिरिट है उसको हम सही ढंग से लोगों तक पहुंचा सकें और उनको मदद कर सकें उस अपने पैरों पे खड़े होने में, इज द आंसर फॉर डिक्रीजिंग दिस डिपेंडेंस।
सारिका,
या इसी लाइन पे मैं ये कहना चाहती हूँ कि आई मीन आप अगर अभी कितने भी ब्रांड्स को देखें जो कि क्राफ्ट बेस्ड हैं, तो जो ब्रांड्स टॉप ऑफ द माइंड आपके आते हैं, द ब्रांड्स विच वी थिंक विच कम टू आवर माइंड फर्स्ट, which are the brands which have survived the test of time in the craft sector. तो अगर उसमें आप देखें तो उस लिस्ट में गवर्नमेंट जो स्पॉन्सर्ड प्रोजेक्ट या गवर्नमेंट एम्पोरियम्स शायद इतने ऊपर नहीं आते हैं जितने कि कुछ ब्रांड्स जो कि प्राइवेटली प्रमोटेड हैं या एंटरप्रेन्योर्स हैं या फिर एनजीओज हैं, छोटे अलग अलग ज्योग्राफिकल लोकेशंस में काम करने वाली, उन्होंने स्टार्ट करे हैं and they are the ones who have survived the test of time because they could bring together the people उस community में and उन्होंने कहा कि हम अपने problems को खुद solve करेंगे तभी हम आगे बढ़ पाएंगे because the policy level changes, the government changes, a lot of things change, and by the time we have a huge country, and by the time benefits reach people, it is, I mean, people have to survive on daily basis. We cannot wait कि अरे वो स्कीम चली है, वो हमारे पास पहुंचेगी, फिर हमें फायदा होगा, बट अभी हमें आज की फिक्र करनी है. इसका एक एग्जांपल, जैसे मैं जिस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के साथ उत्तराखंड में काफी लंबे समय तक जुड़ी थी, कुमाऊं रीजन में, तो वो इसी स्पिरिट के साथ स्टार्ट हुई थी कि व्हेन पीपल सेड कि हमें अपनी समस्या खुद सॉल्व करनी पड़ेगी, क्योंकि वो अगेन एक रिमोट हिमालयन एरिया है, एंड एक्सेसिबिलिटी, रोड, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, बिजली, इंटरनेट, आई मीन अगर आप प्रॉब्लम की लिस्ट निकालने बैठेंगे तो बहुत लंबी हो जाएगी. बट देन the people who took the initiative, they said ki, I mean, but we have to look at the challenges here and the need of the people. So ये आइडिया आया कि क्योंकि उस एरिया में वीविंग का कल्चर था, बट देन उससे रिटर्न्स नहीं आ पा रहे थे. सो देन अगेन उसको एक प्रोफेशनल तरीके से अप्रोच किया गया, वीवर्स को ट्रेन करके इन डिजाइन इंटरवेंशंस, एंड आल्सो गेटिंग देम टुगेदर, बिकॉज बहुत लोगों ने तो छोड़ भी दिया था और कुछ नए लोग जुड़ना चाहते थे, बट देन देयर वाज नो अपॉर्चुनिटी, तो उन लोगों को ट्रेन किया गया. तो इस एनजीओ ने जो फंडिंग की इस्तेमाल हुई थी, वो बस केवल 2 लूम इनिशियली खरीदने के लिए अपने फंडर से उन्होंने फंडिंग दी थी. उसके बाद जो सिलसिला शुरू हुआ, तो वो 2 से 4 लूम अपनी कमाई से करते 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 18 लूम, 20 लूम, 25 लूम हो गए. और वो वीविंग के साथ साथ क्योंकि एक ब्रांड बन गया, तो उस एनजीओ ने एक नया ऑर्गेनाइजेशन खोल दिया, बिकॉज एनजीओ आल्सो रियलाइज्ड, क्योंकि एनजीओ एक डेवलपमेंट मोड से काम करती है, बहुत फंडिंग पे डिपेंडेंट होती है. बट आपको अगर बिजनेस करना है तो उसके लिए एक फ्रेमवर्क अलग चाहिए, माइंडसेट अलग चाहिए, वो ओनरशिप अलग होती है, क्योंकि आपको पता है कि आपको बिजनेस को सस्टेन करना है, तो फंडिंग, एक्सटर्नल फंडिंग से आपको डिपेंडेंसी हटानी होगी. आप अपना इनकम करेंगे, उसमें से बचत करेंगे और उसी को अपने बिजनेस को बढ़ाने में लगाएंगे, तब ये सेल्फ सस्टेन साइकिल चल पाएगी. तो उन्होंने एक सेपरेट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन बनाया उस एनजीओ ने करके, कुमाऊं ग्रामीण उद्योग, और उनका ब्रांड नेम है किलमोड़ा, जिसके काफी सारे अब, क्योंकि वो उस एरिया में काम करते हुए उन्हें 25 साल से भी ऊपर हो चुके हैं, तो अब वो वीवर्स के साथ साथ बहुत बड़े, हम लोग महिलाओं के ग्रुप के साथ भी काम करते हैं. लगभग 600-700 महिलाएं अभी जुड़ी हुई हैं जो कि हैंड निटिंग करती है, क्योंकि उस एरिया में काफी हैंड निटिंग, पहाड़ी इलाकों में आप देखते हैं हर महिला हैंड निटिंग करते हुए आपको नजर आएगी. थोड़ा भी 5 मिनट का फ्री टाइम मिलता है, वो हैंड निटिंग शुरू कर देती है. सो देयर वाज ऑलरेडी सो मेनी पीपल विद स्किल्स, बट देन ये क्योंकि एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन बना विद अ माइंडसेट कि हमें इसका एक ब्रांड बनाना है, एंड वी हैव टू मेक द प्रोडक्ट्स up to take them to the market level. So उसके लिए किस किस तरह की चीजों की जरूरत होगी, बिकॉज अब वो 1-1 किलो 2-2 किलो रॉ मटेरियल नहीं ला सकते, क्योंकि वो लोकली उतना अवेलेबल नहीं है. सो देन यू नीड अ डिसेंट इनफ ग्रुप कि आप एग्रीगेट करके रॉ मटेरियल एक साथ ला रहे हैं, एंड देन दैट इज बीन डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड टू वुमेन, बिकॉज महिलाएं, अगर 700 महिलाएं बिनाई करनी है तो वो सेंटर पे नहीं आ सकती है, ये प्रैक्टिकली पॉसिबल नहीं है रिमोट लोकेशंस में. सो उसको डिसेंट्रलाइज किस तरह से प्रोडक्शन करना है, एंड देन क्वालिटी के पैरामीटर्स कैसे बनाने हैं. और ये भी नहीं है कि जो कि गांव की महिला ने बनाया है हम उसे ऐसे ही मतलब लोग चैरिटी के नाम पे खरीद लेंगे, क्योंकि वो भी सेल्फ सस्टेन मॉडल नहीं होता है. उसके लिए बहुत जरूरी है कि, बिकॉज अल्टीमेटली कंज्यूमर एक बार खरीद लेगा चैरिटी के लिए, बट अगर आपको चाहिए कि वो उस ब्रांड को बहुत शौक से खरीदे और प्रमोट करे, वो तभी खरीदेगा जब आई विल सी अ वैल्यू इन इट, जब मुझे लगेगा कि मुझे बहुत सही क्वालिटी का प्रोडक्ट मिल रहा है, और एडेड बेनिफिट ये कि इट इज एक्चुअली हेल्पिंग पीपल इन द रूरल एरियाज, बट मुझे सही क्वालिटी का प्रोडक्ट मिल रहा है, तभी मैं दोबारा जाकर के, अगर मैंने इस साल किलमोड़ा का स्वेटर खरीदा है, मैं अगले साल फिर शायद खरीदूंगी, मुझे जरूरत होगी तो, क्योंकि आई नो द क्वालिटी इज नॉट कॉम्प्रोमाइज्ड. सो इस तरह की चीजों को धीरे धीरे डेवलप करते हुए और माइंडसेट को चेंज करते हुए, बिकॉज महिलाएं आती थी हमारे पास के लेकर के, ये हो गया हमारे तो स्वेटर बन गए या दस्ताने बन गए, बट वो क्वालिटी ठीक नहीं है, तो उसके स्पेसिफिकेशंस पूरे सेट होते थे. अगर वो क्वालिटी ठीक नहीं तो उनको खोलना भी पड़ता था वो स्वेटर बिनाई किया हुआ है, तो क्योंकि वो पास नहीं होता था. हमारी जो क्वालिटी इंस्पेक्टर थी वो भी वन ऑफ द लेडीज फ्रॉम द एरिया ही थी, जो कि बहुत एक्सपर्ट थी, तो धीरे धीरे उसका स्किल लेवल बढ़ाया इन क्वालिटी चेक, एंड शी वाज वेरी रिजिड, वेरी स्ट्रिक्ट कि ये अप टू द मार्क नहीं है, मैं इसको पास नहीं करूंगी. So it also instills that quality consciousness amongst your artisans also कि हर भी कोई भी चीज बनाएंगे वो नहीं बिकेगी. अगर हमें ये ब्रांड का नाम अच्छा करना है, उसको मार्केट तक पहुंचाना है, तो हमें इन सब चीजों का ध्यान रखना पड़ेगा. So ये सब होने के बाद देन मार्केटिंग चैनल्स की बात है कि वो इतने दूर दराज इलाके से उसको कैसे भेजा जाए आगे. So it was a tourist area, so we said कि चलो let's open retail outlets here because tourist season में बहुत टूरिस्ट आते हैं, but वो केवल seasonal activity, seasonal marketing opportunity है. Then we also connected to the market outside the mountains कि Delhi में या other cities में या international market where we could connect it and we could provide the work to the artisans the year round. So इस तरह से ये एक साइकिल जो स्टार्ट हुई, ये स्लो इसका पेस था. ये नहीं कि डिलीवरेबल आपको 2 साल में 3 साल में दिख जाएगा कि इम्पैक्ट आ गया. इट्स अ वेरी स्लो प्रोसेस एज एवरीबडी who has worked in the field they've been saying, Sonam has been saying that you have to invest a lot of time and that ownership has to be built of the community. उसके बाद that organizational security or safety net has to be, they have to feel the sense of security कि अगर कुछ होगा. पॉलिसी चेंजेस इतने सारे हो रहे हैं, नोटबंदी हुआ, अगर जीएसटी लागू हुआ, तो बहुत सारे आर्टिजन्स में मेलों में उस समय जाती थी, तो जो इंडिविजुअली अपने लेवल पे आते थे और वो अपनी स्ट्रगल की बहुत स्टोरी सुनाते थे कि जीएसटी का सिस्टम आ गया, उससे उनको इतना फर्क पड़ रहा है. बट देन इफ यू हैव अ लार्जर सेटअप और अ सॉर्ट ऑफ अ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन और अ कंपनी कह लीजिए उसको, या प्रोड्यूसर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन कह लीजिए, एक सिक्योरिटी नेट बनती है. एंड अगेन एक्सेसिंग क्रेडिट बिकम्स easier through that rather than individual artisan going. So I think ultimately entrepreneurship is the root, and whatever be the form of it, कि प्रोड्यूसर कंपनी है या प्राइवेट लिमिटेड कंपनी बना रहे हो आप, या कोऑपरेटिव बना रहे हो या सोसाइटी बना रहे हो, दैट कलेक्टिव एनर्जी हैज टू कम टुगेदर. और पर ये आपको हमेशा याद रखना है कि अल्टीमेटली ये एक सेल्फ सस्टेनिंग बिजनेस के लिए आप मॉडल बना रहे हो. सो जो बिजनेस एथिक्स होता है, बिजनेस को हम कितना भी भले ही बोल दें कि वो बहुत एक्सप्लॉइट करते हैं जो भी, बट देयर आर अ फ्यू थिंग्स जो हमें बिजनेस से भी सीखने की जरूरत है कि दैट्स टाइमलीनेस एंड द सर्विस क्वालिटी एंड द कमिटमेंट. एंड सो इस तरह के जो एथिक्स है वो हम कुछ चीजें हैं जो उससे सीख सकते हैं बेशक. So this is how I think if an enterprise grows around craft, it can be self-sustained, and I mean we don't have to then depend upon कि ये funding वो funding, because वो always is with strings attached.
Yeah.
Sonam, before you say, I just want to say a small thing. छोटा सा एक एग्जांपल देके मुझे ऐसा भी लगता है, और मैंने इसके एग्जांपल्स देखे हैं, कि हमें थोड़ा एक आउटकम बेस्ड अप्रोच लेना पड़ेगा. मेरा मतलब ये है कि पंखा है वो हवा देता है, और हमारा ध्यान ये रहता है कि पंखे को कैसे बेटर कर दें डिजाइन के हिसाब से, ना कि आउटकम पे रहता है कि हवा आनी चाहिए. अब उसके दूसरे साधन भी हो सकते हैं हवा लाने के, कि हम खिड़की खोल दें या हम ऐसे जगह पे बैठ जाएं जहाँ पे हवा अपने आप आ रही हो. हमारा फोकस सिर्फ पंखे पे रहता है. तो जैसे मैं ये सोच रहा हूँ कि हम लोग हैं, हमारी एक्सपर्टीज अलग अलग जगह पे, हमारा अगर एक लाइवलीहुड बनाना है तो हम सिर्फ डिज़ाइन करके ही लाइवलीहुड नहीं बनाते हैं. हम जाके स्कूल में पढ़ाते हैं, हम लोगों को कुछ दिखाते हैं, समझाते हैं, ऐसे सेमिनार करते हैं, ऐसे वर्कशॉप्स करते हैं. तो आर्टिशियंस के ऊपर ये कंस्ट्रेंट क्यों डालें कि उसको सिर्फ प्रोडक्ट बना के ही कमाना है. मेरा मतलब ये है कि अगर उनके दूसरी चीज़ों के साथ एक संबंध और एक जोड़ा जोड़ी की जाए, जैसे कि क्राफ्ट टूरिज्म बहुत पॉपुलर हो रहा है और काफ़ी जगह पे एक सक्सेसफुल हुआ है, जहाँ पे लोग बाहर से आते हैं, आर्टिशंस के घर में जाते हैं. हमने कश्मीर में ये चीज़ शुरू करी थी क्राफ्ट वॉक्स के नाम से, जहाँ पे एक्सपर्ट्स उनको लेके जाते थे, आर्टिशंस के साथ खाना खाते थे, उनके परिवार में थोड़ा समय बिताते थे और उनसे खरीदारी भी करते थे. तो इस तरह का एक इंटीग्रेशन अलग अलग चीज़ों में कोविड टाइम्स में हमने देखा है कि कितने ऐसे कोचिंग सेंटर्स शुरू हुए हैं आर्ट के, क्राफ्ट के. आर्टिशियंस को क्यों इस तरह के आइडियाज़ के साथ या फैसिलिटेशन नहीं मिल सकता कि वो अपना एक ट्रेनिंग. आजकल ये सब चीज़ बहुत आसान हो गई है, क्योंकि आईटी डिजिटल टेक्नोलॉजी अच्छी हो गई है और हर जगह पे फैल गई है देश के अंदर. तो इसका एक उपयोग करके उनके जो भी कैपेबिलिटीज और कैपेसिटी है उसको इस्तेमाल करने के अलग अलग हम ढंग देखें, और उसमें प्रोडक्ट के साथ जो इनकम होती है और प्रोडक्शन के साथ और बेचने के साथ होती है, उसके अलावा भी देखें कि कहाँ कहाँ पे उनके स्किल्स और कैपेबिलिटीज को इस्तेमाल करके उनकी इनकम को जनरेट कर सकते हैं।
जी जी, नहीं आप बहुत सही कह रहे हैं। थोड़ा समय कम पड़ रहा है। मैं द लास्ट suggestion or point of view that I'd want to take is from Sonam, and then I'll try and consolidate the discussion points that we've had so far. अब तक हमने जो बातें की हैं उसमें से कुछ चीज़ें निकल के आई हैं जो कि मैं एक बार बोलना चाहूँगी, बट उससे पहले सोनम, आप व्हाट इज योर टेक ऑन दिस?
क्योंकि ऐसा है कि आई थिंक एक तो जो गवर्नमेंट का रोल है, और जो एक 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 सिंस इंडिपेंडेंस जो एक एक गवर्नमेंट का एक लार्जर रोल है कि रूरल डेवलपमेंट और एक यू नो इंडस्ट्रीज जब शुरू हुआ था इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन इन द अर्ली 60s, जो एक एक लंबा सा एक जर्नी है। तो अभी तक भी हमारा सिचुएशन मोर लेस इज द सेम ओनली इन मोस्ट केसेस। काफी डेवलपमेंट हो गया है, लेकिन अभी भी जो हम ये डिस्कस कर रहे हैं, आई रिमेम्बर जब रंजन ये बात करते थे, जब हम व्हेन आई वाज इन एनआईडी, तो काफी सारा पॉइंट्स और प्रॉब्लम्स अभी भी वही बात कर रहे हैं। तो कहीं ना कहीं मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि मेरे जो एक्सपीरियंस में जो मुझे ये लगता है कि कहीं ना कहीं हम लोगों ने ठीक से अपना अपना जो रोल्स है वो समझा ही नहीं, पार्टनरशिप और कोलैबोरेशंस में, कि गवर्नमेंट का क्या रोल होगा, या तो एंटरप्रेन्योर्स का क्या रोल होगा, कम्युनिटीज का क्या रोल होगा। कहीं ना कहीं क्योंकि एवरी टाइम एक नया जो गवर्नमेंट आता है उनका एक फर्स्ट पर्सपेक्टिव आता है, एक फ्रेश स्कीम्स आता है, तो कहीं ना कहीं ये सारा चीज ना एक एक स्कीम दूसरा स्कीम को ओवरलैप कर देता है। कहीं ना कहीं कन्वर्जेंस होता ही नहीं है। एक ही बेसिकली 5 लाइन डिपार्टमेंट्स आर टॉकिंग अबाउट ओनली वन थिंग बट दे आर डूइंग इट डिफरेंटली। तो लोग तो उतनी ही है ना गांव में। तो एक 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 जो आर्टिजन है गांव में, वो उसको पिगरी का भी ट्रेनिंग मिल रहा है, उसको फार्मिंग का भी मिल रहा है, उसको क्राफ्ट का भी मिल रहा है, उसको सब कुछ मिल रहा है, लेकिन उसका कोई एक सिंगल सोर्स इनकम है ही नहीं। वो खुद को बता भी नहीं सकता कि मेरा स्पेशलिटी मैं ये करता हूँ, यू नो। तो उसको बोले कि आप क्या करते हो, मैं विलेजर हूँ, आई एम अ विलेजर, दैट्स हाउ हिज इंट्रोडक्शन स्टार्ट्स, यू नो। तो कहीं ना कहीं ये हमें समझ में नहीं आ रहा कि कैसे क्या होगा। एक एक चीज तो फंडामेंटली ये है कि जब हम एक सोशल अपलिफ्टमेंट का जो एक मॉडल बनाते हैं और एक बिजनेस मॉडल जब बनाते हैं, काफी सारा टाइम एक कॉन्फ्लिक्ट हो ही जाता है। काफी सारा चीज जो सारिका ने बताया, एक जो एक प्रोफेशनलिज्म है, एक जो थिंग इज रिक्वायर्ड फॉर बिजनेस सो सस्टेन ऑन इट्स ओन, क्योंकि कॉम्पिटिटिव मार्केट्स है। तो उसी हिसाब से वो सारा ये एग्जिस्टिंग सोशल सिस्टम्स के साथ वो ठीक से वो मिलता नहीं है। और द मोस्ट कॉम्प्लेक्स थिंग इज दैट इसमें कहीं ना कहीं हम लोग का जो कम्युनिकेशन सिस्टम्स इज वेरी बैड। हम क्या बोलना चाहते हैं वो समझ में नहीं आता, यू नो। तो ज्यादातर ये कि दिल्ली से जो एक गाना चालू होता है, बाय द टाइम इट रीचेस द विलेज हियर इन सिक्किम, वो ट्रांसलेशन होते 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 वो जो गाना है जो ऐसे
मीनिंग बदल जाता है।
हाँ, तो एक यहाँ दूसरा गाना बन चुका होता है। जब वो बंदा गा रहा होता है गाँव में, वो दूसरा ही गाना गा रहा है। तो कहीं ना कहीं एक कम्युनिकेशन बहुत ही कॉम्प्लेक्स है। तो कहीं एक एक हम लोग आई थिंक सारिका, मी एंड शारिक, हम लोग को ये एंटरप्रेन्योर क्यों लगता है, क्योंकि ये चीज एक चीज ऐसा है कि क्योंकि ये इसमें मैं आई कैन टेक कंप्लीट ओनरशिप ऑफ रिस्क दैट आई एम टेकिंग। अगर डूबा तो इज माई मनी, इफ आई मेड मनी इट्स माई थिंग। तो कहीं ना कहीं मैं एक मुझे ना कहीं एक ऑब्लिगेशन नहीं रहता कि अच्छा ये है, उसको उसको खुश करना है, इसको खुश करना है, इसको होता ही नहीं है वो चीज। कहीं ना कहीं एक आई हैव कंप्लीट कंट्रोल ओवर माय ओन डेस्टिनी। तो इस चीज में जब एक आप आर्टिजन्स को भी, जब हम एक वेरी क्लोज सिस्टम में हम बैठ के एक दूसरे के प्रॉब्लम समझते हैं, तो उसमें कहीं ना कहीं ना ये वी आर एबल टू डू, आई डोंट लाइक द वर्ड जुगाड़, बट वो हो जाता है उसमें कहीं एक अच्छा अंडरस्टैंडिंग। अगर एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप में स्पेशली इन द सिस्टम लाइक दिस अगर हो जाता है, तो यू विल एंड अप इन अ मच बेटर सिनेरियो। क्योंकि कहीं ना कहीं हम लोग को ये लगता है कि अच्छा हमको गवर्नमेंट सपोर्ट चाहिए ही नहीं, ऐसा नहीं है, दिस इज नॉट व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से। लेकिन कहीं ना कहीं हम लोगों को अंडरस्टैंड करना कि गवर्नमेंट का लिमिटेशन भी क्या है, वो भी कितना कर सकते हैं। ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि सारा एक्सपेक्टेशंस इज ऑन देयर हेड। नो, एंटरप्रेन्योर भी उससे को गवर्नमेंट को ही देखेगा, अरे यार कब बैंक को बोल के मुझे लोन देगा, है ना। या तो एंटरप्रेन्योर्स अगेन थिंकिंग अच्छा कब स्किलिंग के लिए मुझे पैसा देगा, मैं अपना पैसा नहीं डालना चाहता। तो ये सारे जब ये चीज होता है, क्योंकि आई हैव आल्सो मेड दैट मिस्टेक, दैट्स व्हाट आई एम टेलिंग यू, दिस इज वेयर आई फेल्ड। क्योंकि व्हेन आई began as a entrepreneur, I said अरे ये स्कीम भी है एमएसएमई में, ये स्कीम भी है मिनिस्ट्री में, ये स्कीम ये है, तो वहां से ऐसे ऐसे ट्रेनिंग कर देते हैं, ऐसे ऐसे होता है। बट ये बाय दिस टाइम ना, वो जो जो एक ट्रस्ट डेफिशिएंट होता है गांव में, वो बहुत कम, दे डोंट ट्रस्ट यू एट ऑल आफ्टर सम पॉइंट। क्योंकि you have put them in the same situation in spite of training them and making products, उनको वही situation में रखा है आपको, they are making their earnings to
Which is what we also faced.
Yeah. तो ये तो अगर आप कोई भी मारवाड़ी बिजनेसमैन को बोलेंगे ना कि ये मेरा बिजनेस मॉडल है, तो दे लाफ एट यू, जैसे सर थैंक यू वेरी मच, आपका चंदा देना है तो आप बताओ, मैं दे देता हूँ आपको, because this is not how things actually in entrepreneurship works. But yes, you have to innovate in this entire model. इसमें आप और सबसे मेरे लिए तो सबसे बड़ा चीज ये है कि अगर हमारा आर्टिजन्स जो कम्युनिटी और हम लोग है, अगर एक दूसरे को प्रॉब्लम समझ में, इफ यू आर नॉट इन अ पोजीशन टू नॉट ओनली अंडरस्टैंड बट एक्सेप्ट ईच अदर्स प्रॉब्लम, तो ये लंबा जर्नी है, वो मतलब बहुत शॉर्ट स्पैन में खत्म हो
जाता है। Agreed. Thanks so much, Sonam. It actually consolidates a lot of things that I was going to say. I'll just quickly put down the points that that I've been taking down while we were having a conversation, and in the session after that. The points that all of you have made, and it will probably be useful for the audience who's listening to the conversation. एक चीज जो बार बार सब लोगों ने कहा है, power of collective. जब एक इंडिविजुअल की जगह जब कई सारे लोग एक साथ जुड़ते हैं, एक चीज की जिम्मेदारी लेते हैं और उसको लंबे समय तक उसके ऊपर काम करते रहते हैं, धीरे 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 बदलाव लाते जाते हैं, तब कोई चीज उसको तब किसी भी चीज को सस्टेन करना, किसी लंबे समय तक उस चीज को चलाते रहने की पोजीशन में आते हैं लोग. पावर ऑफ कलेक्टिव इज वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. The one thing that again all three of you have been saying is that upgradation of an individual through skilling, but from the point of view of entrepreneurship, whatever is required for an individual to become an entrepreneurship, उद्यम वृत्ति जिसे कहा जाता है, उसके लिए जो जो चीजें करने की जरूरत है, उसके लिए प्रोग्राम्स क्रिएट किए जा सकते हैं, बजाय कि छोटी छोटी अलग अलग टाइप की स्किल्स के लिए प्रोग्राम्स बनाए जाएं, जो कि जिसको बांधने के लिए कोई चीज नहीं होती है और इसलिए वो एक समय के बाद फेल करते हैं. पॉलिसी डिजाइन, ये चीज मुझे लगती है कि जब कोई स्कीम बनाई जा रही होती है, जब कोई पॉलिसी क्रिएट की जा रही होती है, वो एक नजरिए से बनाने की जगह पे उसमें कई सारे एक्सपर्ट्स का एक साथ बैठ के और बात करना जरूरी है. अलग अलग उसके स्टेक होल्डर्स या इफेक्ट जिनके ऊपर इम्पैक्ट पड़ता है, उन डिपार्टमेंट्स के लोगों को साथ में आके और फिर वो बनाने की जरूरत है. अगेन यही बात हो रही है कि एक ही काम 5 लोग अलग अलग तरीके से कर रहे हैं, बट ये 5 लोग अगर एक साथ में आते हैं तो आपका हर तरीके से आप उस चीज को इकोनोमाइज कर सकते हो और ज्यादा इम्पैक्टफुल बना सकते हो. रोल क्लैरिटी एक चीज है जो कि अलग अलग डिपार्टमेंट्स के बीच में क्रिएट करने की जरूरत है कि कौन इंसान किस चीज के लिए रिस्पॉन्सिबल है और उसको किस तरीके से वो इम्प्लीमेंट कर सकता है. और कम्युनिकेशन गैप, वो यूनिवर्सल प्रॉब्लम है. कम्युनिकेशन गैप between departments, between people is something that is something that everybody needs to work on. But especially in the places where bigger decisions are taken and which impact a really large number of people or a big community. So with this, I thank all 4 of you for some very, very...
sorry, I just have one more suggestion. I think which I completely forgot about, which is where I think NID's role, is major. I mean, it's been there for a very long time, and I think for a very long time also that particular initiative has not been revisited and probably be useful considering the deliberations right now and what we are discussing, is the National Design Policy, which was introduced in 2007. So उसमें जो एक्शन प्लान है, तो वो जो एक्शन प्लान में काफी सारे ऐसे पॉइंटर्स है, like an incubation and design centers, many other things are there. काफी सारा चीजें हो चुका है, मतलब वो टच पॉइंट्स आ चुके हैं वो, लेकिन देयर हैज नॉट बीन अ थिंग ऑफ उसका जो प्रोग्राम्स है वो उसको कैसे आगे बढ़ाए, उसको कैसे स्केल अप करें, तो वो सारा चीज रिविजिट नहीं हुआ है,
स्टैग्नेटेड।
सो अभी जो भी हम सब लोग का जो इनपुट्स है, जो भी सजेशंस है, if on the basis of that, if you start in fact
addressing the policy,
revisit the national design policy, I think that would really be something, because it's already been introduced in
game changer
bill, already introduced, so that would be a good way forward.
Very valid point, and I'm noting that down, and we intend to share it with the minority government as key points that we've discovered from our conversations here. Thanks so much, Sonam, Sarika, and Sharik, for some very, very valuable insights. It makes my life easier, because then I have a valuable source of points that I can raise from now onwards. With this, we'll end this session. I will give back, I'll invite Bindu to announce the next day's sessions, please. Thank you very
thanks,
much.
Swagata. I've been landed with the job to do that right now. It was a really, really thought-provoking discussion to hear from all of you. And I think if you were there in the session yesterday, the inaugural, we do intend to, as an institution, we do intend to place a report in front of the Ministry of Minority Affairs with all the deliberations here. And I think it's a really valuable suggestion that Sonam has made in the end, that perhaps we should also look at some of the implications in terms of revisiting the design policy. I don't know if our director is here, but certainly it'll go into the report. Yeah. And so as we end day 2, I'd like to invite everybody for day 3 as well tomorrow. We'll be on Zoom. We'll also be streaming live on YouTube. You can catch the recording of the day today it'll get published on YouTube in a few hours. You can share it with your friends who wanted to, hear you but couldn't be here for whatever reason. So please share widely. I think these were some really important discussions, and really appreciate that this final panel was discussing in Hindi. So हमारे सारे कारीगर साथी जो हमारे साथ आज नहीं थे, वो भी सुन के इससे काफ़ी सीख काफ़ी समझ सकते हैं. And yeah, I just quickly share what we are doing tomorrow for all of you. So this is tomorrow's panel session. We start with actually thinking about cultural significance. And today, I think there have been a lot of discussions about that also, in terms of thinking about cultural sustainability and the role of culture in sort of propelling craft as a sustainable and viable sort of option. We're also going to be looking at one of the most important aspects of the scheme in which NID has played a role as a knowledge partner, is this thinking about training and education, and what role a knowledge partner actually can play as the scheme has kind of envisaged, and what our learnings have been, and maybe going beyond that as well. And we'll be having a closing session, I think, where we're really looking forward to having a lively question and answer. And so please do join us, if not for all, but do join us for the closing session, where you can bring in any questions, any thoughts that you've had, and especially for all our panelists. So with that, we end day 3. Thank you, and see you tomorrow.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Everyone. Bye.